Chapter 2561. A princess's love was insignificant in the struggle for power in the country. Her life was like duckweed now, and the direction was completely out of her control. June Liuye's figure flashed in her mind again. Her heart throbbed with pain, but it also flashed with an inexplicable joy. He used her thoroughly. He even asked her to be loyal to him in the past few days of loving each other. What right did he have? He was just relying on her love for him. Now she didn't love him anymore. She was going to be engaged to another man. She didn't want to be manipulated by him anymore. She didn't need to look at his face anymore. She didn't need to see him act in front of her anymore. After the joy of revenge passed, her heart felt empty again. It was as if she had stepped on empty air and couldn't step on anything solid. Perhaps it was because of her cooperation, or perhaps it was because she had already accepted her fate at this point. But Wu Liqian was happy. He pulled her around the mausoleum to show off. This underground mausoleum was very big. There were many forks in the road, like a spider's web. It was easy to get lost if you weren't careful. There were many coffins in the side halls of the mausoleum, but there were no corpses in them, only countless weapons. What was even rarer was that there wasn't even a trace of the unique smell of corpses in the mausoleum. Other than being a little darker and not seeing the light of day, it was not much different from a normal military camp. Jiyu even saw a spacious side hall filled with food, vegetables, and fruits. It could be considered a grain storage. Of course, this place was heavily guarded. If Wu Liqian hadn't brought her here, she wouldn't have been able to reach this side hall. Jiyu grew up in the palace, so she didn't know anything about military matters. But after walking around, a ball of doubt rose in her heart. The things in this mausoleum were too complete. Armory, grain storage, everything was available here. There were even many important paths with powerful mechanisms. Once an enemy invaded, these mechanisms would be activated, achieving the effect of one man guarding the pass and 10,000 unable to get through. How did this look like a mausoleum? It was more like a secret military stronghold. She also paid attention to the soldiers. These soldiers walked with vigor and looked very spirited. It didn't seem like they had been injured. More importantly, the armor on their bodies was bright and new. It did not look like they had suffered a defeat at all. Even their weapons were shiny, as if they had just been polished. Where did these weapons and armors come from? How did they manage to transport so much food? With Jun Liuye's iron-blooded military methods, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens to steal these things. The only possibility was that these things had been prepared here a long time ago. This mausoleum was probably not a real mausoleum, but a secret military fortress. Looking at the freshness of the armor and food, they seemed to be from within the last 1 or 2 years. Jiyu's limbs suddenly turned cold. He was afraid that this so-called mausoleum was not accidentally discovered by Wu Tianxi and his son. It should have been secretly built by them earlier. He was afraid that this father and son pair had long had the intention of rebelling. It was just that Jun Liuye had caught them off guard, and they hadn't had the chance to rebel. If that was the case, why would they save the Full Moon Emperor? They were probably more eager for the death of Full Moon Emperor than Jun Liuye. That way, they would only need to control her as a puppet and use her to summon the real old subordinates of Jiyu country. There was a wolf in front and a tiger behind. What should she do? Jiyu. Wu Liqian held her hand and asked suspiciously, "What are you thinking of?" Chapter 2562. Jiyu suddenly came back to her senses. The series of events had made this naive girl who couldn't hide anything now know how to hide her emotions. Even if she saw through Wu Tianxi and his father's true colors, she couldn't expose them now. She pursed her lips. "I'm thinking about my father and mother. If they see everything you've prepared, I'm afraid they'll be very happy. Unfortunately, they won't know for now." She pretended to brush her hair and pulled her hand out. A complicated look flashed through Wu Liqian's eyes. He patted Jiyu's shoulder. "That's true. Don't worry, we'll try to save them." Jiyu shook her head. "I can't be at ease. If Jun Liuye finds out that I came with you, he'll be angry and do something to my parents." Wu Liqian comforted her. "Don't worry, he won't find out. Sai's disguise is the best in the world. No matter who she pretends to be, there won't be any mistakes." I've already sent people to investigate. After Tsai went back with the guards, there was no movement from the palace. This morning, our people saw them walking hand in hand in the palace garden. They were very loving. Ji was speechless. Her heart felt like it had been stabbed by a knife. She paused for a moment. When she was by Jun Liuye's side, he wouldn't let her go every night. Then last night, did he and Tsai? He should have. Otherwise, if he saw through her disguise, why would he be willing to travel with her this morning? However, it was fortunate that he didn't recognize her. If he did, he would know that she had escaped. Then, her parents strange. Jun Liuye was so smart that he couldn't tell the difference between the person sleeping next to him and the fake. Or was Wu Leqian comforting her? Ji Yu's heart burned. For a moment, she didn't know whether she wanted the news to be true or not. She stood there in a daze. Ji Yu, don't worry. As long as Jun Liuye can't see through Tsai's disguise, he won't be on guard against her, especially in bed. Tsai's skills in this area are top-notch. She can make a man want to die. She'll often make a move at the most ecstatic moment and give a fatal blow. As long as Jun Liuye is dead, the Huiwei Kingdom's army will crumble on its own. Then we can attack back into the city and restore the Jiwei Kingdom. Wu Leqian sketched out the beautiful blueprint for Ji Yu's future. Ji Yu's face was extremely pale. She said stiffly, I'm sleepy. I want to rest. Wu Leqian choked and looked at her face. His eyes darkened and he sighed. Okay, I'll take you to rest. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. Nothing happened during these 2 days. There was no movement in the Purple Moon City. Perhaps Kai's camouflage technique was so brilliant that she had deceived everyone there. That was why it was so peaceful. Ji was also very calm these 2 days. She was either reading or practicing calligraphy in her room every day. However, every day when she saw Wu Tianxi and his son, she would ask when they would take action to save her parents. Wu Tianxi and his son easily fooled her and asked her to wait in peace. She obediently agreed. This made Wu Tianxi and his son very gratified. Naturally, they loosened their guard on her. As a princess who grew up in the hands of her parents, who could she count on at this time? They could only count on them. Naturally, she wouldn't run away. Besides, there were mechanisms everywhere in the mausoleum. Every night, the mechanisms in the mausoleum would be activated. Only Wu Tianxi and his son, as well as some trusted soldiers and patrolling soldiers on duty, knew how to avoid it. Even if a little princess like Ji Yu wanted to escape, she couldn't escape from the mausoleum. Therefore, every night, Ji Yu would only have a little maid who wasn't very good at martial arts to serve her. And this was what Ji Yu wanted. Chapter 2563. The tunnel was long and deep, and the everlasting lamps on both sides were swaying. Ji Yu was wearing a soldier's uniform and was walking quickly in the tunnel. Password. A group of patrolling soldiers appeared from the darkness and shouted. Purple moon rises from the east. Ji Yu answered in a low voice. The patrol didn't doubt her and stepped aside to make way for her. Ji Yu didn't even look back as she strode forward. She turned into one tunnel, then another. Along the way, she met 4 or 5 patrol teams, but because she said the right password, she passed through safely. Ji Yu was originally a person with no sense of direction, and it was easy for her to get lost, but the successive disasters made the once carefree and innocent princess grow up quickly. The mausoleum had such a complicated path, but she had memorized it in just 2 days. She even figured out the mechanisms inside, and after passing through several secret passages, she didn't touch any of them. Finally, she approached the entrance of the mausoleum. There was a tall and sturdy man guarding there. When he saw Ji Yu hurrying over, he frowned and said, Password. Ji Yu said the password and thought that the man would leave without saying a word, but she didn't expect him to reach out his big hand and said, Token. Ji Yu paused for a moment. For the first time, she knew that she needed a token to get out of the mausoleum. She didn't hesitate and put her hand in her sleeve and said slowly, The token is here. Before the last word was finished, a cold light flashed and stabbed toward the man's forehead. This move was as fast as lightning, and the angle was very strange. The man was caught off guard and was hit by her. Chi, the short sword entered the man's brain. The man groaned, and his huge body fell down. Jiyu gritted her teeth and supported him so that he wouldn't disturb the others. Then, she dragged his body to a hidden corner and flew out of the only exit of the mausoleum. Her heart was beating fast. Her slender hand was still stained with the man's blood, but the hand holding the sword was very stable and didn't tremble at all. The purple moon was high in the sky outside, and the wind in the dense forest was soft, bringing the fragrance of the plants, which seeped into her heart. Jiyu hadn't seen the sun for a few days. She stood at the entrance of the cave and couldn't help but take a deep breath. Taking in a breath of fresh air, it was as if her lungs, which had been curled up all this time, had opened up. She didn't dare to stay at the entrance of the cave for too long. After exiting the cave, she immediately flew into the dense forest. Only by escaping into the vast mountains would she have any hope of obtaining true freedom. Now, she was only one step away from freedom. She had just entered the dense forest when her feet suddenly stopped and her entire body froze. A man walked out from behind a large tree. He was tall and slender, with sword-like eyebrows and bright eyes. His black clothes almost blended in with the surrounding darkness. Wu Liqian, Little General Wu. His black eyes were heavy as he looked at Jiyu from head to toe. Finally, his gaze landed on her small blood-stained hand, and he sighed softly. Jiyu, you didn't even dare to kill a rabbit. But now, you killed a person without even blinking. Jiyu lowered her eyes and said faintly, "People change." Suffering had forced her to grow up. Her clear gaze landed on him. "You guys are the same." Wu Liqian sighed. "Jiyu, I haven't changed at all." Jiyu smiled softly. She didn't know if it was mockery or sarcasm, but she didn't say anything. The childhood sweetheart who used to listen to her and protected her like a pearl was now full of schemes against her. How could he say that he hadn't changed? Chapter 2564. Fake. Just like Jun Liuye, he is also a fake. It is all for power and the so-called ambition. Love cannot withstand a single blow in front of these. Wu Liqian seemed to be pierced by her gaze. "Jiyu, where do you want to escape to?" Jiyu still did not speak. Wu Liqian looked at her for a moment, and his handsome face turned cold. "You want to find Jun Liuye, don't you? You can't forget him at all. Have you forgotten that he is your enemy who destroyed your country? Don't you know that he is only using you?" Jiyu pursed her lips and suddenly sneered. "Wu Liqian, don't tell me that you are not only using me. How are you better than him?" Wu Liqian choked and looked at her with a complicated gaze. After a long time, he sighed and said softly, "Jiyu, I don't know about others, but I am sincere to you. I really like you. I admit that my father has long had the intention to rebel, but I never wanted to hurt you. Jiyu, you probably think that the reason why we let you stay is to hold the emperor and not for your own good. But have you ever thought that I have Kai in my hands? If I just want a puppet to command the world, I can let Kai dress up as you to achieve all our goals. But I don't want to do that. I am worried about you. So I persuaded my father to make this plan and take the risk to use Kai to replace you to save you. Jiyu, do you still think that I am purely using you?" Jiyu's eyelashes drooped, and she smiled faintly. "Wu Liqian, do you think I'm stupid? You use Kai to replace me not just to save me, but to let Kai use my identity to assassinate Jun Liuye. Only by killing him can you have the hope of dominating the world, right? But have you ever thought that once Kai kills Jun Liuye, will my father and mother still have a way to live?" Although Jun Liuye was using her, he had temporarily spared her parents' lives. Once he was assassinated, his subordinates would definitely retaliate. The first thing they would do was to kill the Yuan Yu emperor and his wife. Jiyu had thought about this point clearly enough. Wu Liqian was stunned. He didn't expect that Jiyu could think through such a complicated matter so thoroughly. She was no longer the innocent little princess who didn't know the sorrows of the world. "So you're saying that you ran away this time to find Jun Liuye and continue to be his woman in exchange for your parents' temporary safety?" Wu Liqian's expression didn't look too good. Jiyu pursed her lips and didn't say anything. Wu Liqian didn't tell her where she really wanted to go, but there was no need for her to let him know. However, Wu Leqian took her silence as a tacit agreement, and his eyes turned cold. "Let's go. I'll take you to a place." Ji Yu didn't expect that Wu Leqian would actually bring her into the city, Purple Moon City. Of course, both of them had disguised themselves before going there. Wu Leqian's disguise skills were actually not inferior to Jun Liuye's. He used some utensils and props to rub and pinch Ji Yu's face. In less than an hour, Ji Yu had become a completely different person. She had an ordinary, pockmarked face and was dressed in coarse clothes. She looked exactly like a village woman. Wu Leqian himself had also disguised himself as a village man with a dark complexion. When he stood next to Ji Yu, they looked like a pair. The full moon hung in the sky, as big as a jade plate. It hung there, shining down on the crowd below. When Ji Yu entered the city, she found out that today was the Autumn Moon Festival of Ji Yu country. Every house was decorated with lanterns and streamers, and the streets were filled with people. It was very lively. Chapter 2565. Ji Yu's footsteps were heavy. In the past, her father would lead the civil and military officials to the inner city gates to offer sacrifices to the heavens. Of course, he would also enjoy the festivities with the people. After the sacrifice, he would also bring her and her mother to the meteor tower to admire the moon. The family would be happy and harmonious. But now that her parents were prisoners, her life was also like duckweed. The people were still as happy as before, but the people in power on the city gate tower had changed. Ji Yu was now like the rest of the people, crowding under the city gate tower and looking up at the people on the city gate tower. The city gate tower was very tall, and there were dozens of palace lanterns hanging on it. The city gate tower was brightly lit, and people could faintly see the people on it. After 4 days, Ji Yu finally saw Jun Liuye again. As usual, Jun Liuye's face was completely covered by a silver ghost mask. His purple robes were overflowing with colors under the moonlight. Standing beside him was the daughter of the Huiyue country's prime minister, Hong Xiang. Behind them were his subordinates and a few respected elders in the city. Ji Yu finally saw Tsai. It could also be said that she saw another version of herself. When they met last time, Tsai only looked like her, but now she looked 10% like her. She stood slightly behind Jun Liuye with her eyes slightly lowered and her mouth slightly pursed. Even her expression was no different from Ji Yu's usual. No wonder Wu Leqian was so confident in Tsai. She actually had this kind of ability. Ji Yu almost suspected that if she returned to her original appearance and stood beside Tsai, then held hands and spun around twice, no one would be able to tell them apart. Even twins wouldn't look so similar. No wonder Jun Liuye couldn't tell them apart. No wonder he could pretend that Tsai was her and keep her by his side. Ji Yu stood there and forced herself to ignore the bitterness in her heart. She looked at the 3 people. Hong Xiang was standing side by side with him, which meant that the ceremony should be completed by him and Hong Xiang. And at this time, the ceremony should be held by the emperor and empress. He was finally willing to admit that Hong Xiang was his future wife in front of the world. Ji Yu, who represented Kai Yi, was also standing behind him. So, he wanted to give Ji Yu the status of concubine? It seemed that Tsai was quite resourceful. She had only been by his side for 4 days, but she had risen from a bed slave to a concubine. Ji Yu, did you see that? He didn't recognize Kai. He treated her the same way he treated you. Wu Leqian stood next to Ji Yu and quietly stabbed her in the heart. Ji Yu didn't speak. She didn't speak easily now. The girl who used to be as lively as a lark was now as silent as a rock. However, his true sweetheart is Hong Xiang. I heard that she's the only daughter of Prime Minister Xiao of the Huiyue Kingdom, and that she's Jun Liuye's childhood sweetheart. Everyone in the Huiyue Kingdom knows that Hong Xiang likes Jun Liuye, and Prime Minister Xiao has the intention of betrothing Hong Xiang to Jun Liuye. However, the Emperor of the Huiyue Kingdom has yet to issue an imperial edict. Wu Leqian continued to talk about the juicy news he'd obtained. As he spoke, he observed Ji Yu's expression. Unfortunately, the city gate tower was dimly lit, and she was in disguise, so he couldn't see her expression at all. She didn't even change her standing posture. Ji Yu, you don't believe what I've said? Wu Liqian didn't give up. I believe. Ji Yu finally spat out 2 words. Her tone was calm. I've known this for a long time. Chapter 2566. You already know, but you're still so devoted to him. Wu Liqian blurted out. Ji Yu's small face was hidden in the shadows, so people couldn't see her expression. I just can't let go of my parents. She used to treat this love as her everything, throwing herself into it like a moth to a flame. Now, she suddenly understood that there was nothing in this world that couldn't be let go, including love. She was clearly standing in a crowd, surrounded by laughter, but Ji Yu felt a bone-piercing loneliness. Some of her acupuncture points had been sealed, so she could only walk and stop like a normal person, but she couldn't get rid of Wu Liqian. She could only talk normally and couldn't even shout. She had tried to use the crowd around her to escape, but Wu Liqian seemed to have seen through her thoughts and held her hand tightly, without letting go. Husband, look at how loving this young couple is, holding hands the entire time. Good, good. Your husband will also hold your hand. Ji Yu's lips twitched when she heard the young couple talking behind her. Loving? How could she and Wu Liqian be loving? 8 bells suddenly rang from the tower, indicating that the ceremony was about to officially begin. The people below cheered thunderously. Let's go, Ji Yu said. Everything in front of her was very glaring to her, so she didn't want to see it anymore. Wu Liqian didn't force her this time. The two squeezed out of the crowd, leaving the laughter behind. Because most people ran to the tower to watch the ceremony, there were fewer people in other places. The two strolled along the main street. Time slipped away unknowingly, and the tower began to light up with fireworks. Red, purple, fiery trees and silver flowers bloomed in the sky, attracting everyone's attention. Ji Yu didn't have any interest in looking back. Ji Yu, where do you want to go? Wu Liqian asked her. Didn't you want to take me back? It's fine now, Ji Yu coldly said. Since she couldn't get rid of him, she could only accept her fate and think of a way in the future. Wu Liqian looked at her small face and suddenly sighed. Ji Yu, I will try to send a message to Tsai and have her postpone her plan to assassinate Jun Luyi. It won't be too late to do it after saving your father and mother. Ji Yu suddenly stopped, and her dim eyes lit up. Really? Then, he laughed coldly. You don't need to coax me. I'm afraid you and your father can't wait for my parents to die. Wu Liqian froze. Back then, he and his father had indeed planned to do so. But now, he didn't want Ji Yu to feel despair again. She had suffered enough blows, and every blow was cruel to a man, not to mention Ji Yu, who had grown up in a honeypot. She was already strong enough to not break down until now. Ji Yu, I'll convince my father to save your parents first. At most, I'll put them under house arrest for the rest of their lives, but I won't harm their lives. Wu Liqian finally spoke the truth in his heart. Ji Yu's heart, which had been submerged in ice water, suddenly had a glimmer of hope because of his words. Now that things had come to this, she had no intention of reviving her country. That was just a fool's dream. She didn't ask for much. She just wanted her parents to be well and live a peaceful life. But could Wu Liqian's words be trusted? After being tricked so many times, Ji Yu no longer believed anyone. No matter what she heard, she would discount it in her heart. Chapter 2567. Wu Liqian could guess what she was worried about at the moment. His blood was boiling. He raised his left hand and pointed his thumb at the moon in the sky. He said solemnly, I solemnly swear that I will save the Yuanyue Emperor and his wife first before I do anything else. If I violate this oath, may I be struck by lightning. Ji Yu was shocked. The oath made to the moon on the night of the full moon in Ji Yu was the heaviest. No one would violate it. Otherwise, there would be a risk of breaking the oath. Wu Liqian was serious. Ji Yu's eyes finally lit up, as if she finally saw a glimmer of starlight after walking in the dark for a long time. However, Ji Yu, saving His Majesty is indeed very risky. We need to think about it carefully. I can't guarantee that I can save His Majesty, but I will try my best. Wu Liqian stared at Ji Yu's eyes and said seriously. Ji Yu nodded slightly. She also knew that it was very difficult, but there was still hope. Kai was not exposed, so everything was normal in the city. Wu Liqian also relaxed his vigilance. In order to make Jiyu happy, he proposed to find an inn in the city to rest for the night before going back. Behind them, the people who were watching the fun in the city tower came back. They were discussing the grand ceremony of the heaven worship ceremony, and they were all excited. The capital was covered with crowns, and the people were all haggard. Jiyu didn't want to see this, nor did she want to hear this. She was about to take a few steps to avoid them, but Child's words directly stopped her in her tracks. "Mother, are we going to kill the emperor tomorrow? I want to see it. I want to see it. Children shouldn't watch such bloody things. How about I take you to ride a horse tomorrow?" "No, I want to watch the emperor being killed. But that's not suitable for children. Wife, Xiaobao is a boy after all. He needs to train his courage so that he can grow up to be a man in the future. Besides, killing the emperor is not something that you can see all the time." "Yes, mother, I want to be a man. Become a man." Okay. You two can watch it tomorrow. I don't want to watch it. It's so bloody that I'm afraid of nightmares." It was like thunder. Jiyu's whole body was frozen. She almost thought that she was hallucinating. She slowly turned around and opened her mouth to ask something, but she found that her mind was blank. Wu Liqian's reaction was faster. He stopped the family who were talking and laughing and interrupted. "Tomorrow? Which emperor?" "Of course it's the captured full moon emperor. Who else could it be?" "Brother, didn't you hear the emperor's announcement just now?" The man from the family of 3 asked in surprise. We thought it was too crowded inside, so we came out long ago." "Brother, you must have heard the whole story. Tell us about it." Wu Liqian was an expert at getting information out of people. He quickly started a conversation with the family. In just a few words, he had already figured out the ins and outs of the whole matter. As it turned out, the one presiding over the ceremony was not Jun Liuye, but Jun Lufeng and Hong Xiang. This was because Jun Lufeng had already been appointed as the city lord of Zus City by the Huiyue Kingdom's king, while Jun Liuye was still the commander of the 3 armies. There were no other promotions, and it was rumored that he would be leading his troops back to the kingdom soon. As for Hong Xiang, she was the daughter of the prime minister and could be considered the most honorable woman here. She was suitable to be a helper. After the ceremony, Jun Liuye came up with Sai and announced in public that in order to appease the anger of the people and to comply with the way of heaven, Emperor Yuan Yu and his wife would be beheaded at Xin Yuan stage at noon the next day. Chapter 2568. At that time, all the people could go and watch. This news was like a bomb, causing the people below to be in an uproar. After the ceremony, people were still talking in 2s and 3s. The husband of the family of 3 was very talkative and told all the news he knew. Princess Jiyu also agreed to kill Yuan Yu Emperor. Jiyu, who had been silent all this time, asked dryly. Her voice was very dry and hoarse. "I heard that Princess Jiyu has no choice now, right? She has also become 3rd Prince Jun's woman, so she can only choose to put righteousness before family." When the announcement was made on the gate tower, Princess Jiyu didn't say anything, but she nodded. Jiyu, the family of 3 finished gossiping and laughed. In fact, it was not only this family of 3 who were talking about this matter on the street. Other people were also talking in 2s and 3s. Their saliva was flying everywhere, as if they were talking about interesting gossip. Wu Liqian pulled Jiyu, who was as stiff as a stick, and walked forward. "Let's go back first." Jiyu felt like she was stepping on cotton. She staggered a few steps and knelt on the ground once. Fortunately, Wu Liqian had been holding her arm. Otherwise, she would have been lying on the ground directly. Her knee was also injured. Her hand was as cold as ice, and her whole body was sluggish. Wu Liqian said a few words to her, but she didn't react. Wu Liqian was also afraid of attracting attention, so he simply pulled her and walked quickly. "Don't worry, we will go back and think of a way." Jiyu suddenly stopped. She used a lot of strength, and Wu Liqian was not prepared for it, so he almost staggered. "Jiyu?" Jiyu's hands and feet were trembling, and she said word by word, "I don't believe it. I don't believe that he would do this to me. I will go and ask him myself. I'm going to fight it out with him." She turned around and ran back in the direction of the city gate tower. Suddenly, the back of her head became numb, and her head became dizzy, and she fell down. Wu Liqian had no choice but to knock her out and held her in his arms. She was as light as a feather, as if she could be blown away by the wind. Jiyu, I am sorry. Let's go back first. We will talk when we go back. Wu Liqian carried her and walked away. He wanted to take her out of the city, but because it was late at night and the gate was closed, he couldn't silently jump over the tall city wall with a person in his arms. So he could only turn back. The sun was shining brightly, illuminating the entire earth. Xinyuantai, a very grand place, is actually the place where Jiyu country executes ministers who have committed crimes. Every time a minister broke the law or angered the emperor would just casually say, "Push him out and behead him." These ministers would be pushed here to be beheaded in public. This used to be the place where the majesty of the royal family was established. It was also the place where the ministers trembled with fear. In the past, when the ministers were executed, the royal family would gather the civil and military officials, as well as the common people to watch. If it was a major case, the full moon emperor would even personally supervise the execution on the stage. The execution of an emperor was a once-in-a-century event. The entire Purple Moon City was in an uproar. It was not noon yet, but there were already many people gathered under the Xinyuan stage. As far as the eye could see, it was densely packed with people. It was the beginning of autumn. The weather was still hot and the sun was scorching. Everyone was drenched in sweat and stretched their necks to look into the distance. Time ticked by, and at 9:30 in the morning, the crowd in the distance suddenly surged. The shouts of soldiers could be heard. Chapter 2569. The shouts of soldiers could be heard as a group of brightly armored soldiers cleared the way. In the middle, they were escorting 2 carriages of prisoners. Wherever they went, the people automatically parted like a tide. The crowd suddenly cheered, "Jun Shui! Jun Shui!" The cheers were like waves, shaking the heavens and earth. No matter what era it was, people always worshipped heroes, not to mention Jun Liuye, the famous war god of the entire continent. He also had the ability to win people's hearts. In just a short month, he had already won the hearts of the people of Jiyu. Everyone worshipped him like a god. But now, he was riding a tall horse alongside the 8th prince, Jun Lufeng. He was still wearing that iconic devil mask, looking awe-inspiring. His whole body was emitting a kind of cold aura that kept people away. Behind him were the 2 wooden caged prison wagons, each of which had a person locked inside. Although the person in front had disheveled hair, he was wearing the Jiyu country's monarch's court robes. He must be the monarch of Jiyu country, Yuan Yu Emperor. In the prison carriage behind him was a middle-aged woman. Although her hair was neat, her head was lowered, making it hard for people to see her face. There was no need to ask. This was the Empress of Jiyu country. Such a group of people was naturally very eye-catching. The moment the crowd saw the prison carriages, it was silent at first. Then it boiled over like adding oil to a raging fire. Perhaps it was to achieve the goal of the parade. The group moved very slowly passing through the crowd. Jiyu was mixed in the crowd, watching all of this with wide eyes. In front and behind her were the Wu family's experts in disguise. Of course, Wu Liqian was also by her side. In such hot weather, everyone else was sweating profusely, but Jiyu's face did not have a single drop of sweat. Her hands were even cold the entire time. "Jiyu, I've already discussed this with Father. Let's see if this is Jun Liuye's plan to lure the enemy. If it's true, we'll try to save your parents." "How? Raid the execution ground?" "Jun Liuye caught us off guard, so this is the only way now." "What are the chances of success?" "There's a 20 to 30% chance." "I'll go to." "Jiyu, I think it's best if you wait outside." "There's no need to go in." "No, I must go. No one can stop me. If you try to stop me, you'll have to kill me." "All right, I'll take you there. However, when you get there, you must listen to my orders and not act rashly. Otherwise, if our identities are exposed, we will all die without a burial ground." "All right." This was the conversation between Jiyu and Wu Liqian when she woke up in an unknown in this morning. She had originally wanted to take things slowly to save her parents, but Jun Luye's move had disrupted all her plans. She could only stake it all on one throw. She couldn't watch her parents die. Even if she had to risk her life, she had to save them. Besides, deep in her heart, she didn't believe that Jun Luye would be so heartless as to kill her parents in front of so many people. He clearly promised to spare her parents' lives. Although she had escaped, Kai was still pretending to be her and staying by his side. He didn't see it, so how could he miss the appointment? How could he go back on his words? Ever since she woke up, her chest felt like it was stuffed with a ball of fire or a block of ice. His head was buzzing, and his mind was often blank. Chapter 2570. Her head was buzzing and her mind was often blank, but there was only one thought in her mind. No matter what, she had to save her parents. If she couldn't save them, she would rather be buried with them. Raiding the execution ground was easy to say, but the chances of success under the watchful eyes of this Azura war god were minuscule. If it really didn't work, she would rush out and reveal her identity. But would Jun Luye give her face? He was only using her. He even spared her parents' lives so that he could make better use of them. Then, was this so-called execution of the emperor a trap to lure Jiyu's former subordinates outside the city to raid the execution ground? Wu Liqian had also analyzed this to her, saying that this was most likely a trap that wanted to catch all of them in one fell swoop. If this was a trap, if they didn't show up and fall for it, her parents wouldn't really be killed. Thus, Wu Liqian repeatedly reminded Jiyu to stay calm and not act rashly before coming. To be on the safe side, he sealed Jiyu's mute acupoint and some of her acupoints so that she could walk freely, but she couldn't use her martial arts. This was to prevent her from rushing out in a fit of anger. At this moment, they had all changed their appearances and blended into the crowd like ordinary people, not revealing anything. Ji was also trying her best to calm herself down. Wu Liqian kept holding her hand to prevent her from getting lost. The other experts naturally fanned out around her, protecting her closely. When the group of people arrived with the prisoner carriage, Ji Yu's eyes widened. She was quite far away, but she could clearly see the people in the carriage. It really was her imperial father and imperial mother. Looking at their figures and the side of their faces that appeared and disappeared, it was all the same. Although she had mentally prepared herself, when she really saw them, the impact on Jiyu wasn't small. Her parents had always lived a life of luxury. When had they ever suffered like this? She couldn't help but take 2 steps forward, but she was pulled back by Wu Liqian. She suddenly turned back, and Wu Liqian shook his head at her, indicating for her to calm down. Jiyu took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. Her gaze fell on Jun Luye in front of her, and her eyes were almost bloodshot. This person played with her feelings in the palm of his hand. Not only did he cause the destruction of her country, he even wanted to kill her. Could it be that men who play politics are all so ruthless? What was love in his heart? What was she to him? Not even a single strand of straw would be of any weight. Her eyes stared straight at Jun Luye, who was slowly moving through the crowd on a tall horse. Her eyes were filled with undisguised hatred. There were too many onlookers, and it was crowded. From time to time, there were impatient people squeezing in and out of the crowd. A burly man almost bumped into Jiyu in the process of squeezing. Fortunately, Wu Liqian blocked him in time. The other experts also quietly squeezed over, forming an invisible human wall around Jiyu, preventing others from approaching. Jiyu didn't notice this. Her eyes were only on the prison carriage. She wanted to break open the wooden cage, save her parents, and then run away. The group of people finally arrived at Xianyuan's stage. The prison carriage was opened on the stage, and 2 soldiers roughly dragged the prisoners out of the carriage. Ignoring their struggles, they forced them to kneel on the ground. The 2 brothers, Jun Luye and Jun Lufeng, as well as another official who didn't seem to have a low position, were surrounded by guards as they sat on the execution platform. He hesitated for a moment. Jiyu also saw the imperial envoy and heard their conversation on the stage. Naturally, she also understood the sequence of events. Her fingers instantly turned cold. Even the imperial envoys were here. It seemed like the execution this time was real. But back then, Jun Liuye had clearly said that he could protect her parents from dying. He clearly said it. Was he really going to break his promise? He was such a powerful person. If he really wanted to keep the two of them alive, he should have a way, right? Unless he didn't want to protect himself at all. Or perhaps it was because of that Kai Yi. That's right. Wu Tianxi was looking forward to her parents' death. Kai Yi was also one of his people. Perhaps Kai Yi had pretended to be her and purposely whispered into Jun Liuye's ear, saying that he could put righteousness before family or something. So Jun Liuye had no scruples. Chapter 2572. Her heart was in a whirlwind, and her heart was in her throat, as if it was going to jump out of her mouth. She clenched her fists tightly, her fingertips as pale as snow. The imperial envoy on the stage had already begun to read out Emperor Yuanyu's crimes. The list was quite long, as if Emperor Yuanyu had committed countless crimes. However, Ji Yu did not hear a single one. She looked at Wu Laqian with fiery eyes. Although she could not speak, her meaning was clear. She was asking when they would take action. After the list of crimes was read out, her parents' heads would fall to the ground. She could not wait any longer. Wu Laqian naturally understood what she meant. He looked away and said, "Wait a little longer." Wait a little longer? Their heads would fall to the ground if they waited any longer. Ji Yu's eyes were bloodshot. Others could ignore this matter, but she could not. The ones kneeling on the stage were her parents. She began to struggle, signaling Wu Laqian to unseal her acupoints. Wu Laqian naturally refused and held her hand tightly. "Ji Yu, don't be rash. Let's wait and see." Wait and see? What kind of miracle could she see? Could she still hope that Jun Liuye would suddenly be merciful and let them go despite his imperial father's imperial edict? Perhaps she could only fight for her parents' lives if she rushed out herself. "Let go of me." She could not speak, so she could only yell with her mouth. Seeing that noon was approaching, Ji Yu could no longer hold it in. "Ji Yu, calm down. Perhaps this is their plan. We can't expose ourselves. You can't expose yourself either." Wu Laqian transmitted his voice to her and held her hands at the same time to prevent her from struggling too much. "I want to go out. Maybe if I go out and beg him, he'll let them go." Ji Yu desperately mouthed her thoughts. Her eyes were completely red. "Ji Yu, don't be naive. Jun Liuye is not someone who would change his mind for a woman. He only wants to use you." Wu Laqian cruelly shattered her hopes. "No, he won't. He promised me." Ji Yu could no longer care about anything else. Wu Laqian could still read lips. He looked at the stage and saw that the imperial envoy was about to finish reading out the sentence. Jun Liuye had been sitting there calmly, without any movement. He did not even look down at the stage. "Ji Yu, you're still so stubborn even now? He had long wanted to kill your parents. The reason why he left them alive today was probably to keep a bargaining chip with his imperial father. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if he does have some feelings for you, at most, he won't do anything to you, but he won't publicly disobey the imperial edict for the sake of a fallen emperor like your father. Are you going to save them or not?" Ji Yu's lips were trembling. Wu Laqian paused and didn't say anything for a moment. If they tried to invade the execution ground now, they would only end up dead. "Ji Yu, we will avenge your parents in the future." Wu Laqian looked away, not daring to look into her fiery eyes. Ji Yu took a step back, her mind blank. Her path was cut off, and her heart was filled with endless gloom. No one helped her. No one could really help her save people. There was no one around. Why did this happen? She had only fallen in love, but in the end, she had sacrificed her country and her parents' lives. She was a sinner. She was the sinner of Ji Yu country. She should be the one kneeling there to be beheaded. It shouldn't be her parents. She was the one who deserved to die. Her fingertips were trembling, and her vision was turning black. Chapter 2573. Wu Laqian would not make a move at this time. The only one who could save her parents was herself. She closed her eyes and began to attack the sealed acupoints with all her might. When Junia was with her, he had once taught her a bit of self-unsealing acupoints. Although there were many people present, most of them were listening to the imperial envoy's announcement, so the noise below was not loud. However, the Imperial Envoy's voice was like a demon's voice. How could Jiyu calm down under such circumstances? There were a few times when she almost went into a fork in the road, causing her blood vessels to hurt and the taste of blood to spread in her throat. However, she could not care less and continued to desperately unseal her acupoints. This kind of acupoint unsealing technique could not be seen from the outside. Wu Liqian thought that she had finally accepted her fate at this time and was slightly relieved. He still felt guilty and transmitted his voice to her. Jiyu, don't worry. I will help you take revenge. He simply pulled her into his arms and hugged her, intentionally or otherwise blocking Jiyu's view of the Xin Yuantai. He could not do anything else for her, but he could still block her from seeing the bloody scene that was about to happen. Jiyu's body trembled slightly, but she did not struggle and was very obedient in his arms. Her face was disguised, so he could not see her expression. However, from her trembling body, he knew how much she was suffering in her heart. The guilt in his heart grew heavier and heavier. He hugged her and randomly promised her, Jiyu, don't worry. I will treat you better in the future. I will not let you suffer any more grievances. I will also treat you like a princess. I will not let you feel lonely. Don't be afraid. Jiyu still closed her eyes and turned a deaf ear to his words. Time was life. She could not waste a single second. She only hoped that time would slow down a little, just a little more, so that she could unseal her acupoints. First, she wanted to rush up to the platform and expose Kai Yi's identity. She wanted to tell Jun Liuye that she was the real Jiyu. She would beg him to let her parents go. As long as he was willing to let them go, she was willing to do anything for him, even if it was as a slave or a servant. Holding on to this little bit of hope, she hit her acupoints with all her might. Perhaps it was due to her sincerity, or perhaps it was because she was originally intelligent, but the acupoints that Wu Liqian had sealed actually began to open up, and the flow of her inner energy gradually became lively. It was also at this time that the Imperial Envoy on the stage finally finished reading his long list of crimes. He paused and looked at the two princes beside him. Your Highnesses, can we begin the execution? The two princes looked at each other and were about to speak. Suddenly, a scream came from below the stage. No, show mercy. That voice was extremely loud and sharp, suppressing the noise of the tens of thousands of people below. Everyone looked in that direction and saw the figure pouncing towards the stage. Wu Liqian never dreamed that Jiyu would do this. He was originally holding her in his arms and thinking about how to continue comforting her. But he didn't expect that Jiyu, who was in his arms, would suddenly hit his chest with her palm. He was caught off guard. His chest tightened and his arms loosened. Jiyu took the opportunity to break free from his arms and let out a scream. She used all of her inner energy to shout, so it naturally shook the entire audience. Wu Liqian was the closest to her, so he was almost deafened by her scream. Of course, he immediately reacted and reflexively reached out to grab her as she jumped out. His martial arts were very high. Although it could not compare to Jun Liuye, it was not something that Jiyu could compare to. Otherwise, he would not have been able to catch her so easily. Chapter 2574. His martial arts were extremely high. Even though he couldn't compare to Jun Liuye, he wasn't someone Jiyu could compare to. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to catch her so easily. He had already made up his mind. After capturing Jiyu, he would tell the others that his wife was a little crazy to dispel their wariness. Then, he would bring her back. His plan was very good, and even his subordinates were very supportive. Almost at the same time, when Jiyu rushed out, those people also took action to stop her. He was confident that he would be able to subdue her in an instant without batting an eyelid. But while dreams were plentiful, reality was cruel. The accident happened in an instant. Just as he rushed towards Jiyu, a black shadow flashed in front of his eyes. That black shadow hugged Jiyu, who was about to jump onto the stage, and held her in his arms. Wu Liqian was shocked and subconsciously shouted, "Let go of my wife." He rushed over. That black shadow hugged Jiyu and spun around, causing Wu Liqian to pounce on empty air. That black shadow spun and avoided the obstruction of Wu Laqian and the other experts. Like lightning, he flew up to the stage and stood in the air. Wu Laqian finally saw the black shadow's true face and was stunned for a moment before he angrily shouted, "Your Excellency is my wife who just arrived." That person was tall and straight, but his face was ordinary. He was the type that couldn't be found in a crowd, but his eyes were very sharp. He coldly looked at Wu Liqian and said, "Your wife?" His voice was as cold as iron. Wu Liqian relied on the fact that he and Ji Yu were disguised and no one would recognize them. He immediately said, "That's right. She's my wife who just got married a few days ago. Let go." Before he could finish his last word, he was interrupted by Ji Yu's voice. Her voice trembled as she said, "Jun Lu Yi." Even though she didn't recognize his current face, she recognized the unique smell and aura on his body. She couldn't be wrong. He actually disguised himself and mixed in with the crowd. Then, the Jun Lu Yi on the stage was fake? Ji Yu's heart was beating wildly and her head was ringing. Her mouth was slightly open and she couldn't react. Jun Liuya hugged her so tightly that she was almost squeezed into his bones. Ji Yu almost couldn't breathe. She struggled and said, "Let go of me." Jun Liuya finally lowered his eyes to look at her. This gaze was like ice and snow, causing Ji Yu's heart to turn cold. All the blood in his body seemed to be frozen by his gaze. However, he didn't let go of her. Instead, he tightened his grip on her. Ji Yu's waist was about to be broken by him. The pain made him inhale sharply. However, she still heaved a sigh of relief. Although she was naive, she was still very smart. After thinking for a while, she came to a conclusion. This emperor-slaying operation was indeed a trap set up by Jun Liuya. She was afraid that he had already found out that Sai was a fake. In order to find her again, he deliberately spread the news that he wanted to kill her father and mother, forcing her to come here. Now that he had finally found her, this emperor-slaying operation should be over, right? No matter what, it was fine as long as her parents weren't killed. She didn't care about anything else. When she was at the peak of despair, hope suddenly appeared in her eyes. She didn't care about the pain from his grip on her waist. She grabbed his sleeve and said, "Jun Liuya, let my parents go." Her bright eyes were like fire as she stared at his face. It was as if she had caught the last straw in her life. Chapter 2575. She could not continue because her mute acupoint had been sealed once more, rendering her unable to utter a single word. Jun Liuya did not even lower his head to look at her. Instead, he looked down at Wu Liqian, whose expression had already changed. He chuckled and said, "Your wife?" His voice was light as a feather, but it hid a knife-sharp chill. Wu Liqian felt a chill in his heart. Before he could think of another excuse, his vision blurred and a dazzling cold light flashed. A long sword circled around him like a swimming dragon. The sword came too quickly, and the angle was too tricky. Wu Liqian had never seen such a fast sword or such a vicious sword move in his life. He did not even have time to pull out the dagger hidden in his sleeve before he felt a sudden chill and pain on his neck. His vision turned black. This was the last thing he felt in this world. His body fell down, falling into the dust. His many subordinates did not even have time to save him. Ji Yu's eyes widened. From her angle, she could see where Wu Liqian's neck was struck by the sword. She could see the blood spurting out. She could see Wu Liqian, who had just been talking to her, fall into a pool of blood. The sudden conflict naturally caused the surrounding citizens to fall into chaos. They scattered in all directions, afraid of being implicated. Wu Liqian's subordinates also wanted to take the opportunity to escape with the chaotic crowd. However, they did not expect that the sound of weapons would be heard. Suddenly, dozens of plain-clothed experts emerged from the crowd. These experts seemed to have already identified Wu Liqian's subordinates. In the midst of the chaos, they actually used their weapons to suppress them. Wu Liqian's subordinates were also dressed as commoners. They wanted to get away with it, so they did not dare to attack and could only cry out, "We're innocent." They were forced back to the center of the field by the plain-clothed experts and separated from the surrounding citizens. There were more than 100 of them. They stood in the middle of the field, shouting that they were commoners and that they should not injure good people. They desperately pretended to be innocent. They had just witnessed Jun Liuye's demon-like attack and were almost scared out of their wits. In addition to the experts, the Huiwei Kingdom soldiers also quietly surrounded them like an iron bucket. They could not escape even if they fought with their lives on the line. They could only pretend to be commoners and try to get away with it. My lord, there are a total of 112 rebels here. None of them were left out. Please deal with them, my lord, a general from the Huiwei Kingdom reported. Jun Liuye didn't even look at Ji Yu in his arms. His gaze swept across those people and only spat out 4 words: kill without mercy. These short words had decided the fate of these people and brought about a new round of slaughter. When Wu Liqian's subordinates saw that they couldn't get away with it, they naturally took out their weapons and began to fight with their lives. However, because they had to hide their identities, the weapons they had on them were all short blades. They couldn't use them well, and coupled with the fact that they were flustered, they were no match for those experts. These experts were all former members of the Dark Shadow Tower. It could be said that each one of them could fight against 1,000. When these people joined hands, it was as if they were chopping melons and vegetables. One by one, they fell. Ji Yu, who was in Jun Liuye's arms, passively watched the massacre in front of her. She watched the blood splatter and the limbs dance in the air. Her heart kept sinking, as if there was a hand in the dark clutching her heart. It tightened inch by inch until she couldn't breathe and couldn't feel her own heartbeat. She wanted to open her mouth and shout, but her acupuncture points were sealed and she couldn't speak. She naturally didn't have any feelings for Wu Liqian's rebels, but they were still her former comrades. Chapter 2576. She didn't have any feelings for Wu Liqian's rebels, but they used to be her companions. They even bought food for her and fetched water for her this morning. When she was in the crowd, just now, they blocked the crowd for her. Now, these lives fell one by one in front of her. Just like Wu Liqian, they became incomplete corpses. So this trap wasn't just a trap to lure her out, but also a trap to catch all the old subordinates of Ji Yu. She and her parents were really just tools in his eyes. Her vision turned black, and her ears even buzzed a little. But a voice still clearly reached her ears. Jun Shuai, do you still want to execute the Emperor Yuan, you couple? Ji Yu recognized this voice. It was the Imperial Envoy's voice. Her heart instantly jumped. She almost stopped breathing. Now that the old subordinates of Ji Yu were all dead, the Emperor Yuan Yu couple who acted as bait were useless. How would Jun Liuye deal with them? She struggled in his arms and opened her mouth. She wanted to plead for her parents, but she couldn't make a sound. Jun Liuye looked down at her in his arms, then said to the Imperial Envoy, "Carry it out, as usual." The Imperial Envoy seemed to be relieved. He immediately turned around and threw the stick that represented life and death at the center of the execution field. He spat out one word: execute. One word shattered all of Ji Yu's hope. One word shattered all of her will. In her wide eyes, she saw the executioner raise the bright knife high, and then, with a swoosh, bring it down. Crack, crack. 2 sounds that made one's teeth ache rang out. 2 heads fell to the ground, and 2 mouthfuls of blood spurted out. Ji Yu's sky was a crimson red of despair. The sky was a crimson red of despair. Ning Xuema's hand that was pressed against the ice coffin trembled. Shun Juli, who had been gently pressing down on her hand, raised his hand and quickly drew a line in the air with his fingertips. The blue light that came from the memory reading quickly disappeared. Ning Xuemo woke up from her dream and opened her eyes. The blue ice cave was still the same as before. The ice coffin was also the same as before. The girl in the ice coffin was still sleeping, and Jun Liuye was still standing in front of it. Ji Yu was in Shun Juli's arms. He was also holding her cold little hand. He sent his psychokinesis into her limbs and bones, quickly expelling the coldness from her body. "How are you?" Shun Juli only then did he speak when he saw that her face had regained its redness. Ning Xuema's whole body felt warm. She smiled at the great god. "I'm fine." Shun Juli did not say anything. He used his telekinesis to check her body again. After making sure that there was no blockage, he stopped and patted her on the shoulder. "Come on, let's have a go." Ning Xiuma, the Almighty, he would occasionally treat her as his disciple. But this kind zest. Ning Xiuma wanted to laugh, but her smile disappeared before it reached her lips. She thought of the little princess Ji Yu's memories that she had just read. So tragic, so despairing. Her mood was even affected by Ji Yu's memories. Her sharp gaze shot towards Jun Liuye, who was standing there with his sleeves down. She said coldly, "Jun Liuye, you keep saying that you love her. Is this how you love her? You killed her parents in front of her." All of this made her, an experienced assassin, terrified, let alone Ji Yu, who used to be so naive and pure. Chapter 2577. Jun Liuye's face turned pale. He finally understood what Ning Xiuma and the rest were reading. He closed his eyes and said, "Her parents weren't killed, but the substitutes I found." Ning Xiuma raised her eyebrows. She was smart enough to understand Jun Liuye's plan. "So this is how you saved Emperor Yuanyu and his wife?" Using the strategy of substituting one person with another criminal who looks similar to Emperor Yuanyu and his wife, and then beheading them in front of the imperial envoy sent by her father to give an explanation to the Huiyue kingdom? Jun Liuye glanced at Ning Xiuma and was surprised by her intelligence. She actually guessed it right. He nodded. "That's right. Back then, my position in the Huiyue kingdom was very delicate. Although my father appointed me as the general of the army, he was very afraid of me. There were a few times when the ministers in the court wanted to find trouble with me. They kept an eye on me, waiting for me to make a mistake. If I wanted to save Emperor Yuanyu and his wife, I couldn't do it openly. I had to do it secretly. After I promised Ji Yu that day, I secretly sent my confidants to look for criminals who looked like Emperor Yuanyu and his wife, but it wasn't easy. It took me more than a month to find them." Jun Liuye looked back at the ice coffin with pain in his eyes. She was naive and didn't have much experience. Her emotions were easily written on her face. Those who were observant could see the clues. At that time, there were spies sent by Imperial Father at my side. They were watching me and the people around me. They couldn't make the slightest mistake. This matter involved a lot of people. To prevent it from being leaked, I didn't tell her about this plan. I just prepared everything in secret. When Ning Xiuma read Ji Yu's memories, she could feel her emotions. She sighed softly when she thought of the helplessness and despair she felt when she was beside Jun Liuye. After she was kidnapped by Wu Liqian, when did you see through Tsai's disguise? Ning Xiuma thought of another question. Jun Liuye's expression changed slightly. She was kidnapped by Wu Liqian? She didn't follow him of her own accord? Of course not. Her parents are still in your hands. Even if she doesn't consider you, she has to consider the safety of her parents. How can she leave with Wu Liqian? Ning Xiuma sneered. Jun Liuye's gaze turned to the ice coffin. Looking at Ji Yu inside, his eyes were filled with regret. I misunderstood her. His eyes and ears were all over the world, and he knew about the relationship between Wu Liqian and Ji Yu. He was Ji Yu's childhood sweetheart, and the two of them were very close. He couldn't be any nicer to Ji Yu. He was also Ji Yu's most trusted friend. Therefore, when he found out that the person who took Ji Yu away was Wu Liqian, he was filled with anger and jealousy. When did you see through Tsai's identity? Ning Xiuma asked again. Jun Liuye's voice was cold. After she returned to the palace, she pretended to be Ji Yu and threw herself into my arms. I saw through her. Although Kai's camouflage technique was very high, she could only deceive others. How could she deceive Jun Liuye, who was also an assassin? The killer's ability to recognize people was abnormally high. In this aspect, Jun Liuye was an expert among experts. What's more, he was very familiar with Ji Yu. He couldn't be fooled by a completely similar appearance. In other people's eyes, perhaps Kai's camouflage was perfect, but in his eyes, Kai was completely different from Ji Yu except for her appearance. She was full of flaws. Jun Liuye was the boss of the assassin world, so he naturally knew the other assassins like the back of his hand. Chapter 2578. He knew that Kai-E was a faceless person, so when he realized that she wasn't Ji-yu, he immediately guessed her identity. In order to avoid alerting the enemy, he didn't reveal Kai-Yi's disguise and only feigned civility. Of course, he didn't have any intimate contact with Kai-Yi. He used the excuse that he was busy and put Kai-Yi under house arrest in the palace. He called a shadow guard who followed Ji-yu that day. After asking about everything, his heart turned cold. He had already guessed that Ji-yu was replaced in the inn. With Ji-yu's ability, if she didn't want to, that person couldn't have taken her away. At this time, there weren't many people who could make Ji-yu trust, so he immediately thought of Wu Liqian. That day, he went to the inn to investigate. He found a secret passageway and found some clues inside, which confirmed his initial conjecture. After he led the troops to attack Purple Moon City, Wu Liqian and his son disappeared. He sent people to look for them, but to no avail. He thought that this pair of cowardly father and son had already fled to other countries. He didn't expect that they were still hiding outside Purple Moon City. They even took this opportunity to take Ji-yu away. As opponents, Jun Lyoya knew that this pair of father and son were not really loyal. They took Ji-yu away because they wanted to use Ji-yu's name to get in touch with the real old subordinates of Ji-yu Kingdom. They wanted to use Ji-yu's name to take control of the Ji-yu Kingdom. They only wanted Emperor Full Moon to die as soon as possible. Ji-yu wanted them to save her parents. With Jun Lyoya's intelligence, he could easily guess everything. He could also guess Ji-yu's situation. He knew that her life wouldn't be in danger, but she would most likely be forced to marry. As for Ji-yu, there was a high chance that she would agree. Furthermore, they might even get married immediately. This speculation made his heart burn. He was worried and angry about Ji-yu. He was angry that she couldn't recognize people. He was even angrier that she allowed someone to send a substitute to pretend to be her. He had secretly planned everything for her, but she had let an assassin impersonate her and then flew away with her childhood sweetheart who had ulterior motives. Those days, Jun Lyoya was like sitting on pins and needles. He couldn't show it, so he secretly sent people everywhere to search. However, Wu Liqian and his son had hidden themselves so well that his men couldn't find them. Kai-E was also very alert. She didn't contact the outside world during the few days she had been in the palace. Kai-E was a very professional person. Even if she was tortured, she would not reveal the secrets of the main family. Therefore, Jun Lyoya did not alert her and only sent people to keep a close watch on her. It wasn't until 3 days later that Sai finally used a hummingbird to contact the outside world, which was secretly intercepted by Jun Lyoya's people. Following the vine to the melon, they found Wu Tianxi's hiding place, the tomb hidden deep in the mountains. After finding the enemy's lair, Jun Lyoya could naturally send troops to encircle and annihilate them. However, that place was easy to defend and hard to attack, so it was impossible to break through with lightning speed. He was confident that he could destroy Wu Tianxi's nest in one fell swoop, but he couldn't guarantee that Wu Tianxi wouldn't take desperate measures and use Ji-yu as a hostage. Only by tricking Ji-yu out of the mausoleum would he be able to attack without any scruples. Coincidentally, the imperial court also sent an imperial envoy to urge him to execute the Full Moon Emperor. He had a sudden inspiration and agreed. He deliberately announced this matter to the people after the Purple Moon Festival ceremony so that the people in the city would spread the news. Chapter 2579. He knew that Wu Tianxi must have spies in the city who would pass the news back to his lair. In order to make Ji-yu give up, Wu Tianxi must have arranged for her to enter the city to watch. Jun Lyoya's guess was mostly correct and could be said to be very accurate. The only thing he didn't expect was that Ji-yu entered the city on the day of the Purple Moon Festival and saw him and Tsai on the city wall. Jun Lyoya arranged everything very carefully, and his guess was right. On the second day of the Purple Moon Festival, his spies saw close to 100 people disguising themselves and entering the city. Because of Wu Liqian's disguise technique, Jun Lyoya's spies couldn't see if Ji-yu was among the 100 people who came out. In order to ensure that Wu Tianxi's men were all caught in one fell swoop, and to save Ji Yu unscathed, Jun Liuye didn't take any action. He knew that as long as the emperor's slaying went on as planned, Ji Yu would definitely come. In order to ensure that nothing went wrong, not only did he send out all the elites from the Dark Shadow Tower to search for Wu Liqian's men, he also disguised himself as an ordinary person and mixed in with the crowd to secretly search for Wu Liqian. Wu Liqian thought that his plan was flawless, but his behavior with Ji Yu was still a little strange. Some clues still fell into the spy's eyes, and they used a secret signal to inform Jun Liuye. Jun Liuye quietly began to arrange the encirclement plan. At that time, Wu Liqian's men didn't know that they had already fallen into Jun Liuye's inescapable net and were still pretending to be ordinary people to watch the show. Of course, the scene of Wu Liqian hugging Ji Yu also fell into Jun Liuye's eyes, making him feel incomparably uncomfortable. He arranged everything and was about to attack Wu Liqian when Ji Yu broke free from Wu Liqian's embrace and rushed to the high platform. That was why he was able to save Ji Yu at lightning speed. However, Wu Liqian's words, "My wife, we've just been married for a few days," completely infuriated him. He made up his mind to kill Wu Liqian on the spot. He had always thought that Ji Yu had willingly left with Wu Liqian, and he also thought that she had really married Wu Liqian. He hated her betrayal, so he gave the military order in front of Ji Yu and let her witness the massacre with her own eyes. Then he helplessly watched her directly spit out blood. After Jun Liuye explained the whole sequence of events, the ice cave fell silent for a moment. After a while, Ning Xiuma said, "So you let her see her parents being executed to take revenge on her?" Jun Liuye's face was pale as he closed his eyes. Yes, that pair of substitutes had to die in the first place. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to save her parents. Then did you secretly explain to her after this incident? Ning Xiuma almost didn't dare to imagine Ji Yu's mood at that time. Jun Liuye's fingers trembled as he stroked the ice coffin. He shook his head. "No," he said bitterly. "I was too ruthless at that time. She didn't give me any chance to explain." Ning Xiuma raised her eyebrows. She refused to listen? Actually, girls sometimes don't mean what they say. Even if she's hurt by you and refuses to listen to your explanation, as long as you control her and force her to explain everything clearly, she'll still listen. You can't say that you don't have a chance to explain. Unless you're afraid of leaking the secret and don't want to explain. Jun Liuye cut Ning Xiuma off. "She's crazy." Huh? Ning Xiuma's heart sank. Jun Liuye's fingers trembled even more as he repeated, "She's crazy." Chapter 2580. Jun Liuye's fingers trembled even more as he repeated, "She went crazy." She saw her parents' heads fall to the ground. Then she spat out blood and fainted on the spot. I regretted it so much that I brought her back to the palace. I wanted to wait for her to wake up before I explained to her, but she went crazy after she woke up. Ning Xiuma was speechless. Even she, who was an assassin, could not bear such a thing, let alone Ji Yu, who was once a spoiled little princess. The successive blows and betrayals had already caused her to be on the verge of despair. Witnessing her parents' deaths was the last straw that broke the camel's back. It was normal for her to go crazy. Jun Liuye looked at the person in the coffin and seemed to be immersed in his memories. She went completely crazy. She did not recognize anyone and was afraid of everyone. She hid in the corner every day, refusing to let anyone get close to her. If anyone approached her, she would scream and tremble in fear. Jun Liuye's voice trembled slightly. I invited all the miracle doctors in the continent, but none of them could cure her. I also took the risk and sent her to the place where Emperor Yuan Yu and his wife lived in seclusion. I thought that maybe if she saw her parents were still alive, she might be able to regain her senses. But she did not even recognize her parents. She only recognized their two pillows and would often hug them and call them Father Emperor and Mother Empress. She would not let anyone take them away. As long as the pillows were touched, she would cry herself hoarse and scream, "Don't kill me, don't kill me." Ning Xiuma thought that she was hard-hearted enough, but at this moment, she felt her nose tingle. It was as if she could see the bright and lively girl's appearance after she went crazy. Shinjuli stood behind her and quietly hugged her waist. He seemed to have sensed her emotions and pressed his lips against her forehead. Ning Xiuma also relaxed her body and leaned into his embrace. The cave was cold, especially after she read Ji Yu's memories. She felt that the cave was bone-chilling. Fortunately, the great god was by her side, and his embrace was as warm as spring. Her gaze fell on the ice coffin again. The girl in the coffin was serene and quiet, as if she had sunk into some kind of gentle dreamland and was unwilling to wake up. She did not want to face the storms of this world again. I don't believe that she's gone crazy. I brought her to see the moon in the desert, and I brought her to the mountains to see the sunrise. These are all things that she said she wanted to do the most. I've done them all, but she still hasn't improved. She can't see the moon, nor can she see the sun. In her eyes, there are only those two pillows. She can't accept anything else. Jun Liuye's voice grew hoarser and hoarser as he clenched his fists. Qian Shang, after we get married, can you take me to the desert? Chapter 2581. She blinked her large eyes in embarrassment. Royal father didn't let me. He was afraid that I'd be blown away by the wind in the desert or get sick from the wind in the mountains. Then she hugged his neck and looked at him with an expectant look. You'll take me there in the future, right? Afraid that he would look down on her, she jumped up and pretended to fight. I have martial arts, I won't drag you down. If a beast comes, I can beat it away. At that time, she was as innocent as a crystal and as proud as a little peacock. She didn't know the hardships of the world and only had him in her eyes. Her world was filled with sunshine, but he was the one who pushed her into hell. If everything could start over, when did you find out that you loved her? You shouldn't have loved her when you were Yi Qianshang, right? Ning Xiuma suddenly asked a sharp question. Jun Luyi froze and gave a sigh after a while. When I first met her, I was just using her. Of course, I also liked her a bit. Until I broke Ji Yu's country and kept her by my side, I found that her weight in my heart was much heavier than I thought. He had grown up in a treacherous environment and had suffered a lot. His heart had long been tempered to be harder than steel. There was only ambition in his eyes, so feelings were just superfluous to him. He never thought that he would fall in love with a woman. Although he liked Ji Yu a bit, compared to his ambition, it couldn't even be considered fraction. That was why he used Ji Yu so thoroughly and didn't show any mercy. He thought that leaving Ji Yu and her parents alive was already not letting her down. Until he saw her pain and the hatred in her eyes, he finally realized what he had lost. He didn't want her to hate him. He wanted her to rely on him like before and talk to him like before. So he began to seriously plan for their future. He thought that as long as his goal was good, it would be good for her, and he would be able to obtain her forgiveness. His plan wasn't bad, but he didn't consider Ji Yu's tolerance. He made a mistake that couldn't be taken back. He didn't have a chance to explain. Until the moment she died, she didn't believe that he loved her, and he would never have the chance to make her believe him again. Sorrow flooded his heart like a tide, bringing with it an almost suffocating pain. Jun Liuye caressed the ice coffin and lowered his eyes to look at the face of the person in the coffin. For a moment, he was lost in thought. If he hadn't been blinded by jealousy that day, and told her that this was a substitute when he killed the emperor of the full moon couple, perhaps she wouldn't have gone crazy, and things wouldn't have developed to this point where they couldn't be salvaged inside the ice cave. He stood tall and straight, his back looking unusually bleak. Ning Xiuma could even see a few strands of white hair between his temples. When she first read Ji Yu's memories, Ning Xiuma still had the urge to slash Jun Liuye. Now that she saw him like this, she felt that he was a little pitiful. Guru, do you think they? Ning Xiuma raised her head to ask for the guru's opinion. Shun Juli only commented with 3 words, "You brought this upon yourself." Ning Xiuma, she coughed and said, "Guru, there's a saying that the onlooker sees more clearly than the person involved." if you were in Jun Liuye's position and fell in love with Ji. Chapter 2582. Before she could finish her sentence, Shun Julie interrupted her. I'm not him, and I won't fall in love with him. I only love you. Ning Xuema was speechless. The great god's confession was really, that's right, the great god had always been high and mighty, never being controlled by anyone. He didn't need to care about other people's feelings, always doing things his own way. Naturally, he couldn't understand Jun Liuye's situation at that time. Jun Liuye was just an ordinary prince who grew up in a world of mutual deception. He was feared by his own father and schemed against by his brothers. One wrong step, and he would be consigned to eternal damnation. He and Ji were originally people from two different worlds. Perhaps they shouldn't have crossed paths. Ning Xuema glanced at the ice coffin and Jun Liuye again. Fortunately, she and the great god spoke in secret. Otherwise, wouldn't this war god emperor be hurt? Ning Xuema suddenly thought of something. Great god, do you have a way to treat Ji mental illness? Shun Jili replied casually. It's not hard to treat. She was too frightened and sad, so a part of her soul was hurt. You just need to repair that part of her soul. His tone was like mending a fishing net understated. Ning Xuema rubbed her brows. The great god's treatment method was simple, crude, and incomparably superior. However, even if she used ordinary methods to treat this kind of madness, she would still be able to treat 80% or 90% of it. This continent didn't seem small, so why didn't they find a real godly doctor back then? Ning Xuema carelessly blurted out her doubts. Jun Liuye, who was standing beside the ice coffin, calmed down a bit. He faintly said, when she went crazy, I didn't give up and tried every possible way to find a godly doctor. Later, I heard that there was a godly doctor in Xingyue country who specialized in treating mental illnesses. I acted as if I had found a treasure and immediately secretly brought her to Xingyue country. Ning Xuema was stunned. Wait, Xingyu country wasn't the last big country at that time? You destroyed Jiyu country. So the king of Xingyu country must have listed you as his biggest enemy and sent a bunch of assassins to assassinate you. You still dared to take a crazy woman to Xingyu country? Wasn't this automatically sending yourself to be killed? Jun Liuye expressionlessly said, I set up a secret branch in Xingyu country. After he saw Jiyu's illness, he told me that he had the confidence to cure her, but the treatment would have to continue for 8 days. Of course, I was overjoyed, thinking that the heavens' eyes finally opened, giving me a chance to redeem myself and get her back. But I didn't expect that my brother crown prince to find out where I went to seek medical treatment in Yu country, and secretly told the king of Xingyu country. On the 4th day, Jesus's assassins to assess you. Ning Xuema did not need to think about it to understand the thrill of that time. She did not interrupt and waited for Jun Liuye to continue. The doctor had a strange habit. No matter who he treated, he did not allow anyone to stay in the valley and only allowed 2 people to enter at a time. Every time after the treatment, I had to leave with Jiyu and live in a secret place outside the valley. We would go again the next day. On the 4th day, I brought Jiyu into the valley as usual, but what greeted me was an assassination attempt. 13 assassins hid in the doctor's house and wanted to kill me by surprise. In order to progress faster, this story will be narrated to explain most of the plot. Also, this story is not insignificant, and it is not entirely a new story. It will be explained later. Everyone, please be patient. While writing this story, Mumu was also thinking about the 3rd chapter. Everyone, please choose between Little Nianma and Shuilan. I can also think of it in advance. I will make this decision based on the opinions of the majority, so please leave your comments. Love you. Chapter 2583. Luckily, I sensed that something was wrong and didn't fall for their trap. When I got rid of those assassins, I found that the godly doctor had already been killed and stuffed under the bed. Ning Xuema was speechless. When it rains, it pours. Jun Liuye continued. Xingyue country's monarch wanted me dead. Not only did he send a bunch of assassins, He also sent soldiers to surround Cool Breeze Valley and set it on fire. I tried my best to escape with Jiyu, but I lost more than 100 of my elite subordinates. Jiyu had already shown some improvement, but she was frightened by the assassination. Although she no longer screamed, she was still in a daze and didn't respond to anyone's calls. Jun Liuye closed his eyes. After that, I found many so-called godly doctors, but they couldn't do anything. They all advised me to accept my fate. How could he accept his fate? He hadn't asked for her forgiveness yet. He hadn't told her the truth that her parents were still alive. The past was too heavy, and Jun Liuye wasn't someone who liked to explain things in detail. Moreover, he was always in a daze, so he might not be able to answer more than 2 questions. Shunjili was a very straightforward person. He didn't bother to ask any more questions, so he used the most direct method, reading Jun Liuye's memories. Everything that happened after that was like a painting unfolding in front of Shunjili's eyes. Of course, Ning Xiuma was always by his side, so the memories he read were also displayed in front of Ning Xiuma. Ning Xiuma finally understood what happened after that. Jun Liuye's memories were just like his personality, organized and concise. Many places were swept past in a flash, but it was enough for people to roughly understand what had happened. Some places were very clear, so clear that it was as if it had happened in front of one's eyes. After Jun Liuye brought Jiyu back to Huiyue country, he used his channels to investigate and found out that the crown prince was behind all this. Old and new hatred came together, making Jun Liuye want to kill the crown prince. With his ability, it wasn't too difficult to kill the crown prince. The reason he didn't do it at first was because he had some misgivings and still cared about his brotherly feelings. He used his own methods to kill the crown prince, shocking everyone in Huiyue country. The king of the Huiyue nation was furious. He wanted to punish him and send troops to arrest him. Who would have thought that not only would they fail to capture him, they would even force him to rebel and lead his troops to force the emperor to abdicate. After a bloody palace coup, the king of the Huiyue kingdom issued an abdication edict and had no choice but to pass the throne to Jun Liuye. He became the retired emperor without any real power and was imprisoned in a palace by Jun Liuye, unable to cause any more trouble. When Jun Liuye ascended the throne, the first thing he did was to make the insane Jiyu his empress. This simply challenged the 3 views of the ministers. Naturally, they were fiercely opposed to it. Among them, Prime Minister Xiao, who had been assisting him, had the strongest reaction. He still wanted his daughter, Hongxiang, to be the empress. The ministers used the fiercest method to remonstrate, and they almost carried the coffin into the throne room. However, Jun Liuye had already made up his mind. The minister's death remonstrances were like a breeze to him, and he didn't care at all. Some ministers were so agitated that they directly killed themselves in the throne room, but he didn't even blink as he watched coldly from the side. After this contest between the monarch and his ministers, the ministers finally understood that the new emperor was different from before. In the past, although he was strict in his management of the army, he was still a modest gentleman in front of the ministers. He also handled things rather gently and smoothly. Chapter 2584. Now, he was cold and merciless. Other than that crazy Princess Jiyu, he showed no mercy to anyone else. He also held military power. Although the ministers were dissatisfied with him, they could not rebel against him. They could only helplessly agree with his decisions. Jun Liuye finally got his wish to marry Jiyu and made her his empress. Unfortunately, she was still in a daze and did not respond to anyone or anything. Jun Liuye could not even be intimate with her. Every time he got close to her, she would scream and tremble. She would have a major seizure. Jun Liuye naturally could not force her. He could only look at her from a distance. The person he loved was clearly by his side, but they were so close yet so far apart. Jun Liuye was undoubtedly an expert in governing a country. He was a born emperor. He had ascended the throne for less than half a year. After a round of bloody political changes, his country was finally stabilized. The political situation was stable and the people submitted to him. Everyone in the imperial court was his people. Aside from occasionally being dissatisfied with some of his actions, they were all loyal to him. After stabilizing the rear, he began to personally lead the troops to attack Xingyue country. Firstly, it was to take revenge for the previous incident. Secondly, it was to obtain a treasure from Xingyue country's palace, the clear spirit pearl. It was said that this pearl was left behind by the emperor when he came to this continent a few hundred years ago. It was said that wearing this pearl could make one immortal. The emperor of Xingyue country had always worn it. His youthful appearance was due to this pearl. Jun Liuye was not interested in immortality. He only wanted this pearl because he heard of another effect of this pearl. It was said that swallowing this pearl could make even a fool smart. Ji was just crazy. Perhaps this pearl could make her return to normal. Xingyue country was the second strongest country in this continent. It was not much worse than Huiyue country. Although Huiyue country had annexed Jiyu country, its strength had increased greatly. It was not that easy to completely destroy Xingyue country. Moreover, the emperor of Xingyue country was also a valiant emperor. He was loved and respected by the people. He was also good at using people. He had countless soldiers and generals under his command. He was completely different from Jiyu country's emperor Full Moon, who did not have the support of the people. It was easy to imagine the difficulty of directly attacking such a country. When Jun Liuye personally led the troops, it was a snowy winter. Outside the city gate, the army stretched for several miles, and the banners were blazing. Not only were the civil and military officials sending them off, but there were also the families of the soldiers. When they parted, they were reluctant to part. This was especially true for the wives of the soldiers. Their eyes were brimming with tears as they repeatedly exhorted and exhorted. Jun Liuye rode alone on a tall horse. Dressed in black and wearing a silver mask, he looked exceptionally cold and lonely. His gaze swept over the soldiers who were reluctant to part with their families, and a touch of sadness flashed through his eyes. Naturally, there were many people who came to see him off, but none of them was the person he wanted. The battlefield was constantly changing and extremely dangerous, so it was naturally inconvenient for him to bring her along. Thus, he left her in the palace and entrusted her to a trusted confidant to take care of her, which was the most appropriate thing to do. Of course, he still couldn't resist going to her palace to bid her farewell that night. Just as he expected, no matter what he said to her, she did not respond at all, as if she did not hear him. Naturally, he would not tell him to be careful out of concern. Just like now, as his only empress, she would not send him off when he was about to go to war. It was time to set off. The soldiers regrouped and were ready to set off. Jun Liuye also turned his horse around and was about to lead the troops out. Chapter 2585. The soldiers regrouped and readied themselves. Jun Liuye also turned his horse around and was about to set off. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something and abruptly turned around. Two women and a man were standing on the city gate tower. It was Ji Yu, Jun Lufeng, and Xiao Hongxiang. Speaking of which, it was strange. After returning from Xing Yu country halfway through her treatment, Ji Yu did not reject the approach of other people, such as the maids who served her, or even Jun Lufeng and Xiao Hongxiang. She only rejected Jun Liuye. Right now, the three of them were standing on top of the city gate tower. Jun Lufeng and Xiao Hongxiang were waving at him with all their might, and Ji Yu, who had always treated him as nothing and never looked at him, was actually looking at him from afar. She placed her hand on the city wall and pursed her lips, looking at him like a normal person. Jun Liuye's body stiffened slightly as he stared at her from afar. His eyesight was good, and he could even see the slightest change in her expression. She seemed to be smiling. Jun Liuye's mind exploded. He actually leaped up from his horse. Under everyone's gaze, he flew up the tall city wall like a black eagle. He landed on the city gate tower and landed in front of Ji Yu. It was only after he landed on the ground that he realized what he had done. He had actually done such a reckless thing, like a miserable youth who had just fallen in love for the first time. The people below the city gasped, but he didn't care and took a big step towards Ji Yu. Ji Yu, however, screamed as if she had been frightened. She took a few steps back and hid behind Hong Xiang. Her body trembled slightly, and she no longer looked at him. This attitude was almost the same as when she saw him. Jun Liuye's eyes dimmed, and the hands that wanted to hug her slowly fell. Jun Lufeng tried to smooth things over. "Royal brother, take care." Jun Liuye nodded. "Take good care of her at home." Jun Lufeng nodded solemnly. "Don't worry, royal brother. I won't let you down." Jun Liuye glanced at Jiyu, who was hiding behind Hong Xiang and refused to show her face. He then turned around and flew down the city wall, swearing to sweep the world regardless of his own body. 5,000 officers and soldiers died in the smoke and dust. Sleeping at night with golden spears and iron clothes, blood stains the battlefield, all dead souls. 8 months passed in the blink of an eye. War had always been cruel, especially when it came to wars between countries. It was even more tragic. After every battle, there would be countless bones and souls left on the battlefield. Although Jun Liuye was very good at leading troops in a battle, the other side was not easy to deal with. His attack was not particularly successful, and in the 8 months since the start of the war, he had already lost tens of thousands of soldiers. Of course, the other side had suffered even more losses, twice as many as him. Moreover, he had also taken down countless cities. His army was slowly approaching the capital of Starmu Nation, the City of Stars. At Tianjiao Pass, his army encountered the most tenacious resistance. The Tianjiao Pass was an important gateway to the vast Star City. As long as the Tianjiao Pass was taken down, then the vast Star City would be just around the corner. Ning Xuema followed Shenjuli to read Jun Liuye's memories. Naturally, she saw many war scenes. Even though she was used to seeing the world, she still frowned slightly. One of Shenjuli's arms was wrapped around her, while the other was placed on Jun Liuye's forehead to read his memories. He seemed to feel the change in Ning Xuema's mood. He glanced at her and suddenly said, "Do you want to change the way I read your memories?" Ning Xuema did not expect him to be able to speak so casually at this time. She could not help but look at Jun Liuye. Jun Liuye closed his eyes and stood there motionless like an old monk. Chapter 2586. It was clear that Shenjuli had brought her directly into his memories. She hadn't been awakened by Shenjuli. "How do I change?" Shenjuli's voice was still casual. "Just go in." Before Ning Xuema could react, a white light flashed in front of her eyes. When she came back to her senses, she found herself floating in the air, and Shenjuli was beside her, still holding her waist. There was a huge purple moon in the sky, and below them were endless battlefields and tents. "Where are we?" In Jun Liuye's memories. Shenjuli's answer was straightforward. The Almighty could actually pull her directly into someone's memories. A new skill. In one of the novels she had read, if the main character wanted to enter someone's memories, he had to play a specific song and use blood as a guide. The procedures were very complicated. She didn't expect that the Almighty would directly pull her in. He didn't even make a gesture. And her Almighty was even more awesome. Ning Xuema's eyes sparkled as she stared at Shenjuli. She almost had stars in her eyes. Shenjuli put an arm on her shoulder and asked lazily, "You look like you admire me a lot?" Ning Xuema nodded without hesitation. "Almighty, you are my idol." Shenjuli's eyes flashed with a smile. His wife seeing him as an idol naturally made him very happy. He accepted all her praises and replied with a single word, "Mm." She praised him for so long, and he only replied with "Mm." This was too perfunctory. Ning Xuema was a little dissatisfied. She looked at him. "Almighty, what am I to you?" She wanted to get a compliment from Shenjuli, such as "You are my pride," or something. Shenjuli didn't even think about it, and replied with a single word, "Wife." Ning Xuema, Shenjuli glanced at her. As if he could see her disappointment, he changed the word, "Wifey." Ning Xuema pursed her lips even tighter. She seemed even more displeased. Shenjuli thought about it seriously this time, and thought of another word, "wife." Ning Xuema was speechless. It seemed like getting a compliment from the Almighty was harder then ascending to the heavens. Forget it. She didn't want to make things difficult for the Almighty. The Almighty wasn't someone who would easily praise others. Moreover, the title of the Almighty's wife wasn't too bad. She patted her mouth and said, "All right, I won't force you anymore. I know I'm your wife, your wife, your wife." Before she could finish, Shun Julie interrupted her. He smiled and looked at her, his eyes serious. "You are still my one and only my life." Ning Shuama's heart skipped a beat. Who said that the Almighty couldn't say sweet nothings? Once he said those words of love, it would really make her heart beat faster. She was obviously thick-skinned and didn't blush easily, but under the teasing of the Almighty's words, she actually blushed. "You're blushing?" Shun Julie looked at her with a faint smile and even pinched her cheeks. How could Ning Shuama admit it? What's there to blush about? It's just that the weather is too hot, and I'm wearing thick clothes. She casually found an excuse. Hot weather? Wearing thick clothes? Shun Julie repeated the question twice. The smile on his face widened. This place was extremely remote and had a cold climate. Although it was August, the north wind was still blowing, and there was even snow in some places. Ning Shuama was wearing a thin chiffon dress. The sleeves were fluttering, but it couldn't be considered thick. If it was any thinner, she would be running around naked. Ning Shuama quickly realized this. Chapter 2587. Ning Shuama quickly realized this as well. Seeing the Almighty's teasing gaze, even the tips of her ears turned red. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to calm down. This is someone else's memory after all. The weather is abnormal, so my feelings are also abnormal. Looking up, she saw Shun Julie looking at her deeply. His eyes were very deep, and there was a familiar burning heat in them. Her heart skipped a beat, and she tried to pull her hand away. I can make you even hotter," Shun Julie slowly said, using a bit of force. He pulled her into his arms and kissed her. Ning Shuama froze. The Almighty had only returned to his original form this morning. He had not had the chance to be intimate with her before he came to this ice cave with Jun Liuya. With a third person present and busy reading Ji-Yu's memory, the two did not cross the line. Of course, the Almighty had his arm around her waist and was very intimate with her. But to Shun Julie, this was clearly not enough. Now that he finally had the chance, he naturally kissed her to his heart's content. Ning Shuama still had some misgivings, so she forced her mouth open. Almighty were still in someone else's memory. Below them was a bustling military camp. Although they were in midair, the people below should be able to see them clearly if they looked up. Okay. Don't worry, the people here won't see us. Shun Julie captured her mouth and blurted out, "Focus." Thus, Ning Shuama focused. Not only that, she even reached out and wrapped her arms around his neck, passionately responding to him. Shun Julie's eyes flashed with a smile, but the bottom of his eyes deepened and burned with passion. The kiss deepened amidst the intense entanglement of their tongues. He suddenly put her down and turned her over to press her against the clouds. With a wave of his hand, her clothes disappeared, his warm body pressed against hers. Ning Shuama, who had been kissed senselessly by him, was now somewhat sober. She hurriedly reached out to push him away. Almighty, we're here to look at his memories. Shun Julie glanced down and saw that there was a fierce battle going on below. It doesn't matter. His memories are still going on. It's not a big deal. Come look at me. Shun Julie's incomparably handsome face was right in front of her. His eyes were as deep as the ocean, as if they were going to swallow her whole. Although Ning Shuama had been intimate with him countless times, being stared at by him like this still made her heart beat faster and her blood boil. She didn't say anything, but stretched out her arms and hugged him tightly. She raised her body and kissed the tip of his nose. Her eyes were brighter than the stars in the sky, and her face was redder than the rosy clouds on the horizon. Shun Julie couldn't help but smile. He loved her so much that he wanted to be with her all the time. He wanted to become one with her. No matter how close he got, he felt that it wasn't enough. Perhaps only a zero distance or a negative distance could fill each other's hearts. "I'm in you," and you're in me. There was a breeze in the sky, and a few clouds were blown over, blocking the intense entanglement between the two of them. They didn't know how much time had passed, and the scene below had changed countless times. However, the clouds that enveloped the two of them didn't change at all. Finally, the clouds slowly dispersed, revealing the two of them inside. Ning Xuemao was still sitting in his arms. Both of them were neatly dressed, and Ning Xuemao was still panting slightly. Even with her great physical strength, her waist was still sore after this round. Her body was extremely weak, and she didn't want to get up from the Almighty's embrace. It was to change the outcome of his original participation. A few hundred years ago, there were 3 countries on this continent. He felt that it was quite good. In order to maintain this situation, he gave each country a gift that didn't belong to this world. Xingyue country had the clear spirit pearl, Jiyu country had the city protection crystal, and Huiyue country had the sky-changing bow. These 3 treasures each had their own powerful uses. They could protect the peace of a region. Because of this, the 3 countries maintained this state for several hundred years. It was only when Jun Liuye appeared that this delicate balance was broken. In fact, the world situation was bound to be divided after a long period of union and united after a long period of separation. Originally, the 3 countries wouldn't have existed for too long. If Shun Juli hadn't left behind these 3 treasures, this situation would have been broken in a few decades. Then, a He Jimin would have truly unified the 3 countries. Could it be that this night had left a deep impression on Jun Liuye? She pulled Shun Juli. Guru, let's go down and take a look. The central tent was brightly lit. Jun Liuye was dressed in martial attire as he sat behind the commander's desk. His face was as calm as water as he asked the subordinates kneeling below, "Still no news? Your Majesty, all of Shadow Tower's spies have been sent out to search the capital's streets and alleys, but they still haven't found the Empress's whereabouts. Your Majesty, the news from the capital said that the Empress was still fine 10 days ago. Who would have thought that she would disappear the next morning? None of her maids saw how she went missing." Chapter 2590. This matter is indeed strange. The Empress residence has a large array. Those who aren't familiar with the terrain can't sneak in, and the Empress servants are all carefully selected. They're the most suitable people, so it's impossible for them to betray their master. The 8th Prince has already imprisoned all the related people and used a secret technique to interrogate them. No one saw how the Empress left. Jun Lufeng had a secret technique to interrogate people. No matter how tightly sealed their mouths were, he could still pry them open and make them tell the truth. Since he used this secret technique to interrogate them, it proved that those people were indeed innocent. But how did the crazy Jiyu disappear? Unless Jun Liuye's face was pale as he clenched his fists. Unless she escaped on her own, but she was still crazy. So how could she escape on her own? Your Majesty, outside. There is someone outside who wants to see you. She said she is Jiyu, Princess Jiyu. A soldier suddenly ran in and stammered. What? Jun Liuye suddenly stood up. The other trusted generals in the tent also opened their mouths wide, as if they could swallow a duck's egg. Jun Liuye almost rushed out. Then he stopped in his tracks and stared in one direction, holding his breath. Outside the tent, under the moonlight, stood a woman. She was wearing a light red robe. Her black hair fell to her forehead, and her eyebrows were like a painting. She stood there quietly, like an ink painting slowly unfolding under the moonlight. She still looked the same as before. Hearing the noise, she raised her head, and a pair of bright eyes looked at Jun Liuye. She smiled like a flower. 1,000 deaths. Jun Liuye staggered for a moment, then slowly walked over. Jiyu tilted her head and looked at him. Her cheeks were red, and so were her lips. Jiyu. He reached out his arms and tightly held her in his embrace, as if she would suddenly grow wings and run away. Ji was almost unable to breathe from his embrace. She reached out her small fist and hit him twice. Let go. There's so many people here. Jun Liuye's arms loosened slightly. Of course, he didn't let go of her. He looked into her eyes as if he wanted to confirm something. Her large eyes were very clear, like crystals. Under his gaze, her cheeks turned red. What are you looking at? She didn't look like she was faking it, and she didn't know how to fake it. Jun Liuye suddenly bent down and picked her up horizontally. She cried out in surprise and wrapped her arms around her chest. Her body slightly curled up in his embrace, but she immediately struggled. Hey, let go. There are still so many of your subordinates here. Jun Liuye looked at her deeply, his eyes darkening. Then he chuckled. What subordinate? Isn't it just you and me here? Ji was taken aback for a moment. She turned her head and looked around. She found that there was no one around. No one wanted to be a third wheel at this time. They all scattered like birds and beasts, leaving only him and her in front of the main tent. Jun Liuye carried her into the bedchamber. This place was bitterly cold, and Jiyu's clothes were not thick, so her hands and feet were cold. The tent was as warm as spring. Jiyu sat on Jun Liuye's bed, wrapped in a thick, soft blanket. She leaned on Jun Liuye's body, looking very comfortable. Jun Liuye was still not at ease, so he got up and poured her a cup of warm wine. He directly put it to her lips and said, Come, drink this first to warm yourself up. Jiyu obediently took a sip from his hand and wrinkled her beautiful brows. So spicy. Jun Liuye's eyes were apologetic. There's no wine for girls in the army. Chapter 2591. He stood up again. Wait a moment, I'll get someone to buy your favorite lotus fragrance wine. The military was filled with hot-blooded men who loved to drink the strongest alcohol. Naturally, they would prepare this type of wine. Ji pulled him back. Forget it. Don't make this special for me. She tugged at the corner of his shirt and looked him up and down. Pursing her lips, she said, You seem to have gotten darker and thinner. The war must be tough, right? Jun Liuye kept looking at her. Suddenly, he sighed and hugged her. Rubbing his chin on her head, he said, It's not tough, Jiyu. Now that you're here, it's not tough at all. Guru, do you think Jiyu lost her memory after recovering from her illness? Ning Xiuma and Shun Juli floated at the top of the tent. Relying on the fact that no one could see them, Ning Xiuma looked down and judged. Shun Juli glanced at the two hugging below and answered with a few words, It's a good thing if she really lost her memory. Ning Xiuma sighed. That's true. The two of them were separated by a great national grudge. If Ji didn't lose her memory, why would she be willing to be with him? Why would she come looking for him? If she really lost her memory, then those injuries wouldn't exist for her. But did she really lose her memory? Ning Xiuma looked at Jun Liuye. He had probably noticed Ji-Yu's abnormality, but she didn't know how he felt right now. His beloved's illness was finally cured. He finally had a chance to explain to her, but she lost her memory again. Looking at her appearance, she didn't remember the injuries at all. How was Jun Liuye going to explain it to her? Ning Xiuma was guessing when the guru's voice suddenly rang out. No need to watch. Let's go outside and wait. Ning Xiuma was stunned, and she was already outside the tent. Guru, this memory is so clear. It's obviously important. I think we should watch the whole thing. Ning Xiuma was still unwilling to give up. Shun Juli pulled her into his arms and said directly, I don't like you staring at other men. Don't worry, they will come out again. The great god's possessiveness, Ning Xiuma said helplessly. If you don't want me to look, then I can at least listen, right? Shall we go and listen? Shinjuli looked at her and suddenly smiled slowly. Xiuma, so this is your taste. Huh? Which one? Ning Xiuma was confused. You like to eavesdrop. Shun Juli slowly opened his mouth with a smile that was not a smile. Ning Xiuma was speechless. Originally, it was an honorable matter. How could the great god make it sound vulgar? Ji, how did you get here? Jun Liuye's voice came through the wind. Ning Xiuma was stunned. She was currently 200 meters away from the tent. Logically speaking, She shouldn't be able to hear what the people in the tent were saying. She looked at Shun Julie, and Shun Julie pulled her to sit down. Since you want to listen, then listen here. So, it was the great god's doing. Aside from the great god, there probably wasn't a second person who could do as he pleased in other people's memories. Ning Shuima fell into Shun Julie's arms. She openly eavesdropped while praising him in satisfaction. Great God, you're really perverted. Shun Julie didn't mind. Thanks for your praise. Your husband will be perverted again tonight. Ning Shuima was speechless. All right, she shouldn't bicker with the great god. She should just focus on eavesdropping on the two people in the tent. Chapter 2592. Qian Shang, there's something strange. I seem to have slept for a long time, and after I woke up, I seem to have forgotten some things. However, it's a good thing that I still remember you. I remember that you promised to marry me, and you really did marry me. However, my memories are hazy, and there are many things that I only remember in bits and pieces. Am I sick? After a while, she heard Jun Liuye's gentle reply, and you're sick. After I woke up, I found out that you led an army to attack Xingyu country, so I ran out of the palace to find you. Qian Shang, why didn't you bring me to war? Ji Yu's voice had a trace of grievance. Marching and fighting is very tiring. Ji Yu, I didn't want you to suffer. Liar, it's clearly you who didn't want me. Ji Yu, I missed you and I never forgot you. There was some movement in the tent, and after a while, Ji Yu's low cry of surprise was heard. Ji Yu, I'll let you understand how much I missed you. Jun Liuye's voice was very dark, and then there was a sound that made people's faces turn red. It seemed that Jun Liuye had pushed Ji Yu down. The sound suddenly disappeared, and only the sound of the wind could be heard. Ning Shuima looked at the great god from the corner of her eyes, but the great god's expression did not change, and he only said 4 words, "It's not suitable for children." Ning Shuima, great God, how many times have you done such things that are not suitable for children? She listened carefully again, but she really couldn't hear anything, so she gave up. When she read Ji Yu's memories with the great god, there were also some intimate scenes. She was originally very interested, but every time that happened, the great god would use a spell to cover it up. The great god's mosaic was better than anyone else's, so Ning Shuima couldn't even see a hazy shadow. Now that it was like this again, Ning Shuima also knew that it was useless to argue. She suddenly thought of a question. Great God, when you read Ji Yu's memories just now, why didn't you use this method? She felt that this method was more immersive, and she could also talk to the great god casually. It was more than a level higher than the old method. Shun Julie rested his head on her shoulder and replied lazily, "This method can only be used on living people. It's useless on dead people." Ning Shuima understood. Shun Julie looked at her with an ambiguous smile in his eyes. You suddenly asked this question. Did you want me to use this method for a long time? Ning Shuima, she recalled that when she first entered this memory realm, the Almighty had pushed her down without saying a word. Her pretty face tensed up, and she pushed him away. She righteously said, "Great God, you're too perverted." Shinjuli, He rested his head on his hand. I just think that this method is the most convenient to read memories. What are you thinking? Ning Shuima, she looked at the tent in the distance that should be overflowing with spring. The two people inside shouldn't be doing anything for the time being. They probably wouldn't be done without 2 hours. She thought for a moment and reached out to touch the Almighty's chest. Shun Julie let her touch him and didn't forget to tease her. You want again? On your head. Ning Shuima took out a chess set from his chest. Great God, the night is long and I'm not in the mood to sleep. Let's play a few games of chess. The Almighty's storage space was open to her, but every time she needed something, the Almighty would let her take it herself. She wanted to touch his chest. At first, she was a little uncomfortable, but now she felt very natural. The two of them walked slowly in front, while Jun Yuye's 4 personal guards followed them from a distance. After walking for a while, Jiyu occasionally turned back and saw the four guards. She then turned back to look at Jun Liuye. We're admiring the moon. Should we let them follow? Jun Liuye paused in his steps and waved at the four guards behind him, indicating for them to wait where they were. The guard captain was still worried. Your Majesty, it's wartime now. I'm afraid it's not safe outside the camp. Why don't we bring a team of guards with us? Jun Liuye looked at Jiyu. Chapter 2594. Jun Liuye looked at Jiyu. Jiyu pursed her lips. I don't like being watched when admiring the moon. However, Your Majesty's safety is also very important. If Your Majesty wants them to follow, then let them follow. Jun Liuye looked at her for a moment and smiled. He said softly, I don't like being watched either. Jiyu, let's go. You don't have to follow. Holding her hand, they gradually walked away. The guards followed for 2 steps, but they didn't dare to disobey His Majesty's order. They could only stop. Because there was a battle just now, they could still see fallen corpses along the way. Each of them looked hideous and incomplete. There were soldiers who specialized in dealing with the aftermath of the battle, collecting them. Seeing His Majesty coming with a woman, these soldiers all bowed and saluted. Jun Liuye just waved his hand and let them do their thing. He then left with Jiyu. Turning his head, he saw that Jiyu's face was slightly pale. He pulled her into his arms. Scared, Jiyu said, they're bloody. Before she could finish, Jun Liuye bent over and picked her up. Her face was buried in his chest. His heartbeat was steady, and his voice was also steady. These don't suit you. Don't look. His figure rose, and like a fluttering wind, he carried her and flew into the depths of the mountain. He was afraid of scaring Jiyu again, so he went far away from the battlefield. However, this would require him to walk more than 10 miles. Why must we fight? Jiyu leaned in his arms, her voice a little muffled. It's good to live a peaceful life. The people can live and work in peace. Jun Liuye's footsteps paused slightly, but he didn't say anything. Jiyu raised her head in his arms. I heard that you attacked Xingyue country this time to cure my illness. Is that true? Jun Liuye looked down at her. Who told you that? Because he was afraid that the king of Xingyue country would destroy the pearl if he knew. Jun Liuye never told anyone his purpose. Only his true confidants knew where Jiyu got this information from. Jiyu blinked. It's the 8th prince. Did I say something wrong? Jun Liuye breathed a sigh of relief. He did tell Jun Lufeng. Jun Lufeng always thought that Jiyu was crazy and didn't like to talk, so it was possible that he talked in front of her. He said softly, that's right. Star Moon Country has a pearl that can cure your illness. But I'm fine now, so I don't need that bead anymore. So let's not fight anymore, right? Jiyu looked at him seriously. Jun Liuye did not say anything. The war had been going on for so long. As long as they could win this battle, they would be able to march straight into the capital of Star Moon Nation, completely destroy Star Moon Nation, and unify this continent. This had always been his dream, and it was also the ultimate dream of his generals who had fought bloody battles for many years. Now, the entire army had suffered so many casualties and paid so much blood and lives for this battle. Seeing that victory was in sight, how could they retreat just like that? Jiyu looked at him for a moment and suddenly smiled. Okay, I was joking. Your ambition has always been great, and you have the ability to dominate the world. In the future, when you conquer the world, I hope that you can become an emperor for all eternity and leave your name in history for hundreds of generations. Jun Liuye muttered to himself. Just as he was about to say something, Jiyu reached out a finger and touched his lips. Okay, let's not talk about this anymore. The moon is beautiful tonight, so let's focus on looking at the moon. It was such a beautiful night, so it was better not to talk about these disappointing things. He still had many things to explain to her in the future. They still had plenty of time in the future. A little earlier today, eager, sincere, begging for a monthly vote, a recommendation vote. My dear little masters, please give the monthly vote to Moo Moo. Chapter 2595. All right, Jun Liuye revealed a smile, and lowered his head to gently kiss her lips. "We'll talk about it later." Seeing that his lover was fine, June knew he didn't care about anything else and just wanted to make her happy. The snowy peaks were covered in snow, with ice towers and ice mushrooms everywhere. The moon was bright, and the mountain was high. Standing on this ice peak, the moon seemed much bigger and brighter. The moonlight here was truly beautiful. The faint purple moonlight fell on the ice peak and reflected a strange light, just like a crystal palace. Ji-yu stood on an ice tower and looked up at the purple moon in the sky, as if she was entranced. June Lyoye was looking at her. "The moon here is really beautiful. It's like a painting." Ji-yu turned around on the ice peak. Her skirt fluttered in the wind, like a flower blooming in the moonlight. June Lyoye simply sat down. "You're even more beautiful than the moon." He sat in a lazy and carefree manner. His blue robe fluttered in the wind, making him look like an immortal. At this time, he was no longer the decisive Iron-Blood Azura War general, but rather the king of assassins Yi Qianshang, who had doted on her, loved her, and liked to tease her, but also held her in his hands. Ji-yu tilted her head to look at him. "Your mouth is as sweet as before." June Lyoye stretched out his legs and waved his hand at her. "It's cold up there. I'll hold you and watch from below." Ji-yu shook her head. "You'll see the truth when you stand high. Isn't that right?" Her words seemed to imply something. June Lyoye raised his head and looked at her for a moment. Suddenly, he got up and flew straight to her side. He hugged her waist and said, "Then I'll watch it with you." The two figures on the ice tower were leaning against each other. He was tall and handsome, while she was petite. The moonlight fell on them like water, creating a beautiful scene. Ning Xiumao was invisible in the air as she watched the pair below. She couldn't help letting out a sigh. "Great God, don't you feel like something is wrong?" Shun Julie declined to comment. "Something's wrong. Let's watch the play." The two people below stood on the ice tower and looked at the moon for a while. June Lyoye said, "Ji-yu, in the future, I will take you to see all the moons on this continent. They all have their own characteristics." Ji-yu smiled and looked at him from the side. Under the moonlight, her eyes were like water. "I think that our Ji-yu country's purple moon city's Huayu Tower's moon is the most beautiful. Don't you think so?" June Lyoye stiffened slightly. That place used to be the place where the crystal was enshrined. It was also the place where he used her to destroy Ziyu City's enchantment. That night, he accompanied her to watch the moon for half the night. It gave her the greatest happiness, but it also destroyed her home. After the city was breached, that place was also burned down by the Crown Prince's troops, leaving behind only broken walls and ruins. He thought that Ji would be traumatized by that place and would never want to go there again, so he didn't recultivate. Since she liked it, he would send someone to rebuild it and make it exactly the same. "Ji, I'll take you there to see it in the future." June Lyoye promised her and took the opportunity to hold her hand. Even though she was wearing so much, her little hand was still cold, as if it would never be warmed up. June Lyoye calmly channeled energy into his palm, making his palm like a small heater, trying to warm her hand up. Ji didn't say anything and didn't avoid him. She was staring at the moon in a daze. Her frequency of being in a daze was especially high today. June Lyoye didn't say anything either. He simply hugged her and sat down on the ice peak. He rested his head on her shoulder and sighed softly. "Ji, I never thought that we would have a day like this." Chapter 2596. He thought that she would be muddle-headed for the rest of her life, never talking to him again, never looking at him again. He never thought that there would be a time when they could lean on each other like this. God knows how long he had been longing for this moment. Ji came back to her senses and looked at him. Her eyes were as clear as water under the moonlight. "Qianshang." "Ji, call me Lu Yi." His breath blew into her ears. He actually hoped that she would call him by his real name. After all, Yi Qianshang was only his alias. Ji paused and tilted her head to look at him for a bit. "June Lu Yi, your real name is more like you." What do you mean?" June Lu Ye's breath was on her neck. My heart flows like the night. You were once a Shura general, and Shuras belonged to the night. Jiyu actually began to drop her book bag. Jun Luyi was silent for a bit behind her before letting out a soft sigh. My thoughts are all on you right now. At this moment, he was still the charming Yi Qianshang. His hand was supporting his head as he looked at her with a teasing gaze, but also a burning gaze. Ji Yu's eyelashes trembled and half covered her eyes, making it hard for people to see her expression. She no longer looked at him, and her face was a bit red. Are you shy? Jun Luyi reached out to hold her in his embrace. Ji Yu, I hope that we can have this day every year. He didn't ask for anything else. He just wanted her to stay by his side. Her black hair was a bit cold. He rubbed his chin against her head and excitedly said, Ji Yu, how about I help you style your hair? Ji Yu paused for a bit before nodding. Jun Luyi straightened her body and used his fingers as a comb, beginning to comb her long hair. Her black hair was like silk, smooth and soft as it flowed through his fingers. After a while, her long hair was combed into a beautiful bun, and a jade hairpin sparkled in her hair. You're quite skilled. Do you often help girls style their hair before? Ji Yu rubbed her hair as she spoke in a half-joking manner. Idiot, I often help you style your hair before. Jun Luyi's voice was filled with pampering and helplessness. Ji Yu's fingers stiffened, and then she touched the hairpin again. She was stunned for a moment, but she had already felt the shape and texture of the hairpin. It was the hairpin Yi Qianshang had given her. She had treated it like a treasure and would take it out to look at it several times a day. She was as happy as a fool. Now that the hairpin was back in her hair, she felt her scalp hurt from the cold. She seemed to be in a daze. Jun Luyi looked at her. Ji Yu? Ji Yu suddenly stood up, tilted her head, and smiled at him, smiling innocently and charmingly. How about I dance for you? Jun Luyi clapped his hands. Good. I've long heard that your singing and dancing are superb. Today is a good opportunity to appreciate it. I'll accompany you. He took out a purple bamboo flute. The sound of the flute rang out faintly, like the rising of the wind and the blooming of flowers, drifting leisurely through the mountain peak. Ning Shumo looked down and saw his light blue robe fluttering in the wind like flowing water. The beautiful jade on his waist swayed slightly. He looked free and easy. His bearing made Ning Shumo feel like it was very familiar, like she had seen it before. She knew quite a few people, including all kinds of handsome men, but there were very few people with Jun Luyi's bearing. Lazy and free, with a faint trace of cynicism. Who did he resemble? Jun Luyi's appearance and bearing were both very good. Ning Shumo thought that if she had seen him before, she would not have forgotten him. She suddenly raised her head and looked into his long and narrow eyes. He was still in the same position as before. His left hand was holding the bamboo flute, and his right hand was holding her hand. He even hugged her with no intention of letting go. Of course, he had no intention of slapping her away. Even his eyes were calm, without much emotion. Ji Yu, you didn't lose your memory. Ji Yu's eyes slightly shrank. She suddenly raised her head and laughed. Of course. Jun Luyi, you also have a day like this. She laughed happily, as if she wanted to laugh out all the things that had been stuck in her heart these past few days. She succeeded. She had finally succeeded. She had finally killed this Azura. She had finally killed the enemy who had caused her family to be destroyed. She had finally made him pay the price he deserved. She should be happy. She should be happy. So she laughed louder and louder. She laughed until her voice changed pitch. Chapter 2598. Jun Luyi held her tightly, and she didn't want to struggle. She wasn't afraid of him taking revenge on her and strangling her to death. Her greatest wish had been fulfilled, and she no longer cared about life and death. What joy was there in life, and what fear was there in death? She had struggled at death's door until now, all for this moment. More and more blood flowed out, and her hands became more and more sticky. The smell of blood filled her nose, and she laughed until tears came out. Jun Liuye, so your blood is also red. Ning Xuan, who was watching from the side, also let out a soft sigh. She finally made a move. Shun Julie glanced at her. You knew she was going to make a move? Ning Xuema said, of course. She actually had 8 chances to make a move, but she missed them all. I was worried for her. Shun Julie was speechless. Ning Xuema sighed. The girl who was once as pure as crystal has actually learned how to act. Her acting is quite good, and there are almost no flaws. Shun Julie put a hand on her shoulder. But it didn't escape your eyes, did it? Ning Xuema said, of course. I was the king of assassins in the past, and observing people's expressions is my forte. Although Ji Yu's disguise was good, in the eyes of a professional agent like Ning Xuema, there were still many flaws. Shun Julie glanced at the 2 people below and said lightly, Jun Yuya is also the #1 expert in the world of assassins. In other words, if Ning Xuema could see through it, he might be able to see through it as well. Ning Xuema was startled. She understood what Shun Julie was trying to say. She shook her head. The IQ of a man and a woman in love will plummet. Those who are closely involved will not be able to see the situation clearly. Ji Yu's disguise was good, and Jun Yuya might not have been able to see through it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken that sword, right? Shun Julie pointed at the 2 people. Then did you see where Jun Yuya was stabbed? Ning Xuema frowned. I saw it clearly. It should be near the heart meridian. It's a critical place. However, Ji Yu was probably still a little nervous, so the position of her sword was a little off. Otherwise, it would have taken Jun Liuye's life. Shun Julie shook his head slightly. It's not that she missed, but that Jun Liuye's muscles moved slightly to the side when she was stabbing at him, so the attack didn't hit his vitals. Ning Xuema. She didn't expect the Almighty to be even more observant than her. This perverted insight. However, with Jun Liuye's ability to adjust his muscles slightly, shouldn't he be able to completely dodge the attack? Then why? Ning Xuema thought of something and blurted out. He took Ji Yu's sword on purpose. Shun Julie rubbed her hair in relief. Smart girl. Ning Xuema looked down at Jun Liuye with a complicated gaze. This person's thoughts were extremely meticulous. Everything he did was planned out before he acted. It could be said that he was watertight. Why did he take that sword on purpose? What was his plan? On the ice peak, Jun Liuye finally couldn't hold on any longer. His body slowly fell to the snow below his feet. Fresh blood gushed out from his body, quickly forming a small pool of blood. The white snow and the red blood were especially glaring. Ji Yu finally jumped away from his body. She took a few steps back and tripped over something, falling to the ground with a plop. She seemed to have lost all her strength. Sitting there, she looked at Jun Liuye lying not far away, her gaze trembling slightly. Perhaps it was because he had lost too much blood, but Jun Liuye's face was as white as snow. His dark eyes looked at Ji Yu, as if whirlpools were swirling in them. His pale lips opened and closed a few times before he hoarsely said, Ji Yu, like this will you vent your anger? Chapter 2599. Ji Yu's face had been flushed with excitement, but now it was slowly losing its color. She clenched her fists, her face even paler than his. Her palms were stained with blood, and she subconsciously wiped them on the snow. She hatefully said, Jun Liuye, you owe me this. Although her words were fierce, her voice was trembling. Jun Liuye looked at her, his beautiful eyes half narrowed. His gaze was so deep that it made one's heart palpitate. You're right, this. I owe you. His voice became softer and softer, and finally his eyes slowly closed. He's dead? Ji Yu's entire body stiffened, as if her soul had been sucked out of her body. She sat there, staring blankly, not moving at all. Haha, not bad. A voice suddenly came from a mountain not far away. Following that, more than 10 figures appeared from the surrounding mountain peaks. The person in the lead was dressed in a beautiful snow-white robe, with a jade crown on his head. His face was powdered, and his lips were like a painted pill. He looked to be in his 20s, and he was handsome and delicate, like an elegant young master. However, there was a hint of a king's domineering aura beneath his brows. The others were all dressed in the uniform of a warrior. They were all dressed in white, and even their hair was snow white, almost the same color as the surrounding snow. These people were clearly the young master's subordinates. They clustered around him, faintly protecting him in the middle. Ning Xiumao, who was watching the show from the sky, was moved. This is the king of Xingyue country? Should be. Shenjuli also glanced at the young king. I heard that the king of Xingyue country has a pearl that can guarantee immortality and eternal youth. This person is probably a few hundred years old, right? Eternal youth is true, but that pearl doesn't have the effect of making people immortal. Shenjuli's tone was indifferent. Huh? Ning Xiumao raised her eyebrows. She was still a little puzzled. Great God, back then, you left treasures for the 3 countries. These treasures should have the ability to protect the country, right? Why did you give Xingyue country a beauty pearl? That pearl's eternal youth is just a side effect. Then what's the main effect? It allows the wearer to teleport away in an instant no matter how badly injured they are. It can even bring along 80 generals. Ning Xiumao gave a thumbs up. This function is awesome. If a king could escape with his elite ministers in an instant, then there would be no such thing as the fall of a country. Because of these elite forces, even if his capital city was breached, he could still organize his forces to counterattack. This time, Junliuye had attacked Star Moon Country. It was easy to take over the capital of Star Moon Country, but to completely eliminate the ruler of Star Moon Country was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Ning Xiumao looked at everything below and sighed. I didn't expect Jiyu to join hands with this monarch. It seems that her madness was also cured by this monarch with the bead. That should be the case. Shun Juli nodded slightly. I heard that the monarch of Star Moon Country is also a person of great talent and strategy. His intelligence is not much worse than Junliuye's. It seems that he is indeed very scheming. He is not Junliuye's opponent, so he actually put an effort on Jiyu. This time, he even personally took action. Shun Juli said indifferently. He and Junliuye are enemies. If there's a chance to see Junliuye die with his own eyes, he won't let it go. That's true. Ning Xiumao nodded. The monarch of Star Moon Country was defeated by Junliuye and must hate him to the bone. He couldn't wait to personally cut him into pieces. Now that there was such a chance, he would definitely want to see it with his own eyes. Who knows? He might even want to stab him a few more times. Chapter 2600. Ning Xiumao's guess was very normal. The king of Xingyue country looked at the unconscious Junliuye lying on the ground. His face was filled with pride as he slowly walked towards Junliuye. Your Majesty, this person is dangerous. He's not dead yet. Your Majesty shouldn't go near him. His loyal subordinate hurriedly stopped him. Star Moon Country's king waved his hand and waved his subordinate away. He didn't say anything, but he sneered in his heart. This person's vital point was hit. Even if he didn't die, he would die soon. What could he do? He wanted to go up and stab him, personally chop off his head. He still walked towards Junliuye. His subordinates didn't dare to stop him. Just to be safe, one of them suddenly raised his hand and shot a flying knife at Junliuye on the ground. He wanted him to die more thoroughly. Clang! Star Moon Country's king raised his finger and sent out a strong wind towards the flying knife. The knife turned in the air and fell to the ground. Who asked you to be a busybody? Star Moon Country's king's face was as calm as water. If you act recklessly again, behead. He wanted to take this person's life personally. Only then would there be a sense of accomplishment. His guards didn't dare to make any more moves. They looked at Junliuye. His vital point had been hit, and blood had already dyed his clothes red. Even if he didn't die, he was on his last breath. His chest was barely moving up and down. This person had been blinded by beauty and didn't bring a single guard with him to the depths of the mountain. Now that he was so heavily injured, even if they didn't go and stab him, he wouldn't be able to live. These people finally relaxed, and their gazes fell on Jiyu. She had been sitting there the whole time, as if her soul had been hollowed out. She looked at the moon in the sky without moving. At this time, no one cared about her. She didn't care about anyone either. Star Moon Country's king finally arrived in front of Jun Luyi and looked down at his dying face. His lips curled slightly. Jun Luyi, are you unwilling to die like this? On the ground, Jun Luyi didn't move and didn't react at all. Star Moon Country's king slowly pulled out his saber. It was a sharp blade that could cut through iron like mud. As long as it was swung out, not to mention Jun Luyi's head, even a lump of iron would be cut in half. The saber light reflected the moonlight and flashed. Jiyu, who was sitting in a daze, seemed to be disturbed by the saber light. She suddenly raised her eyes and looked over. After seeing what the monarch of Xingyu country was doing, her pupils shrank as she immediately saw through his intentions. Her body flashed, and she suddenly pounced on him. What are you doing? Her petite body stood in front of Jun Luyi. He won't be able to live. You're not allowed to disgrace the corpse. She hated him and wanted to kill him, but she couldn't just stand by and watch as his corpse was dismembered. The king of Star Moon Country narrowed his eyes and said softly, Jiyu, there's only one way for me to verify a person's death, and that is to cut off his head. Be good and move aside. Jiyu's face paled. You are the ruler of a country. Don't go too far. Before she could finish her sentence, she felt her waist tighten as someone hugged her from behind. Before she could react, her whole body suddenly soared into the air. From the corner of her eyes, she saw several cold lights flashing. Several streaks of blood and a scream pierced the sky. Ji was dumbfounded. She had already sensed that someone was hugging her. Although her back was facing that person, her nose could smell the unique fragrance of cold plum blossoms and the faint smell of blood on his body. She could even feel her back quickly becoming wet and sticky. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.